Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled Mayor and Council meeting for the town of Berlin for Monday, March 28th, 2022. Just for everybody that's in attendance, typically we do like a COVID update, but that's somewhat behind us. Do you want to tell everyone where the bathrooms are?
Yes, I think that everyone came in the back stairwell, so when you leave this evening, that door, all you do is hit the panic bar when you go down the bottom of the steps that are open. While you're in the building, out in this hallway, if you turn left, there's a unisex restroom on the far wall, and there's one back here in this corner as well. There is a water filtration system out here if you need drinking water as well. There's also, I believe, on the table in the back, hand sanitizer should you need that as well.
Thank you. And anyone that wishes to speak during any of the public hearings, there is a sign-up sheet as you came in right here behind Mr. Martinek. Go ahead and raise your hand for a moment. Right behind him, there's a sign-up sheet for anybody that would like to speak. It's a matter of public record, just so that we have everybody's name and property address before you come up. So we'll begin with a moment of silence and then a pledge of allegiance, and then we will go into the swearing in for Mr. Brian Robertson. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So item number 1A on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes for the regular session for March 14th, 2022.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Councilmember Worth.
Second.
I have a second by Councilmember Nur. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect that the regular session minutes for March 14th, 2022 passed unanimously with all council members present. Item number 1B on the agenda is the special executive session minutes for March 21st, 2022.
Motion to approve?
I have a motion by Councilmember Nur
Second.
and a second by Councilmember Burrell. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect that the special executive session minutes for March 21st, 2022 passed unanimously. Item number 1C is a statement of closure for the special executive session for March 21st, 2022. The time of the closed session was March 21st, 2022 at 6 p.m. The place of the closed session was here in the council chambers. The purpose of the closed session was a discussion referencing RFP 2021-02, the disposition and development of parcel 57, parcel 410, and parcel 191 at Heron Park. The date and time that we were to return back to the public meeting is today's date, March 28th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Just for the record, the motion was made to go into closed session by Councilmember Nur, second by Councilmember Purnell. All members were in favor, and everybody was present. Statutory authority for closing the session. The meeting was closed under the following provisions of the General Provisions Article 3-305B. Item number 14, before a contract is awarded or bids are open, to discuss a matter directly related to a negotiating strategy or the contents of a bid or proposal. If public discussion or disclosure would adversely impact the ability of the public body to participate in the competitive bidding or proposal process. The actual items that were discussed, it was a discussion in reference to RFP 2021-02, the disposition and development of parcel 57, parcel 410, and parcel 191 in Heron Park. Let's see. That's it. So then item number 2 is the swearing in of Brian Robertson for the Historic District Commission as an alternate position. So Brian, come on up. We'll stand right in front of the little eye of the camera. You can stand on the right side, raise your right hand. Congratulations. I think that's why everybody's here tonight, right? Let's give Brian a round of applause. Congratulations. This is probably one of the largest turnouts we've ever had for a swearing in. So what you're going to do is raise your right hand, and then you're going to repeat after me. I,
I,
go ahead and say your
Brian
name,
Robertson,
do swear and affirm
do swear and affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and that I will be faithful
and that I will be faithful
and bear true allegiance
and bear true allegiance
to the state of
to
Maryland
the state of Maryland
and support the Constitution
and support the Constitution
and laws thereof,
and laws thereof,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
to the best of my skill and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of
execute the office of
the Town of Berlin Historic District Commission,
the Town of Berlin Historic District Commission,
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
Congratulations. I like it. Thank you, brother. Thank you. All right, up next is agenda item number 3A, which is ordinance 2022-02, establishing regulations governing, wow, I can't talk this evening, governing short-term rentals, and the planning director, Dave Engelhardt, is going to run point on summarizing the ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is ordinance 2022-02. We've had discussions before. We had a first reading at a previous meeting of the Mayor and Council. And this is basically unchanged from the draft that was presented at the first reading. I don't know if you want me to go through each section of it. But generally, this is allowing short-term rentals of residential units in all the residential districts, R1, R2, R3, R4, and where they are allowed on the second floor in the commercial districts, the B1, the B2, and the B3. We had previously added requirements of a responsible agent, whether the owner or an assigned agent, be within a 30-minute travel time of the rented unit. We established the license requirements and the fee amounts for those license requirements, the parking, and the occupancy was also in accordance with our Town Code Chapter 6, Article 5, the housing standards for floor space and occupancy. Other than that, it has not been altered significantly from when we first presented a draft of the ordinance, except that one of the previous drafts did have the stipulation that under State Department of Assessment and Taxation rules, the home to be rented for a short-term rental would be the primary resident of the owner. And that has been eliminated in this copy that we have now.
Thank you. I do want to cover just a couple items because this does date back to 2019 when we first started talking about short-term rentals in Berlin. And what we did was we approached the ordinance with the mindset here in item number A, which is the intent of this section and regulation stated herein to maintain the character of residential neighborhoods in the town of Berlin and to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of residents while allowing short-term rentals to exist under certain conditions and circumstances. I do want to point out that we did work through a lot of the feedback that we received in the public listening sessions, as well as the comments from the council and the public. There is a lot of information in here under the requirements section, outlining, as Dave mentioned, having a responsible party nearby and local. There's also a lot of information in here about where those decals need to be placed, what type of floor plans need to be in the units, so that people that are staying in these short-term rentals have the ability to understand how to egress or get out of a building if there was a safety issue. There is visible indicators from the address side of the property to help identify that for the police and the fire department. There's also, Dave, if you don't mind going over what happens if you rent without a license, and what happens if your license were to expire?
Well, I think that number 3 is duration of license. Licenses are issued for the duration of 1 fiscal year, concurrent with the town of Berlin's fiscal year, which is July 1 to June 30th every year. Licenses are not to be prorated. The license may be renewed as long as the licensee is in compliance with this section and other sections of the town code, and upon payment of the annual license fee of $125. Licenses that expire for more than 30 days will be deemed expired and must complete a new application. And what else did we have?
Let's go over the violations portion if you don't mind, and I think that should summarize.
Violations and enforcement are the responsibility of the planning director or housing inspector pursuant to the town charter. A decision by the planning director to revoke a license may be appealed to the housing board of review. Number 1, renting without a license. Rental of a property as defined by this ordinance without a license will result in a reoccurring fine of $600 for each 30-day period of operation. Other violations. A violation of any requirement of this section or other sections of the town code, excluding renting without a license, will result in a civil violation of $100. Repeat or continuing violations will result in a fine of $200 and may result in revocation of the short-term rental license for the remainder of the licensing period plus 1 year.
And just one of the things that we heard quite a bit during the feedback sessions were related to noise, and if people had to call the police department. Can you walk through that process? Say there is a troublesome property, you have to call the police department. That is then fed into the planning and zoning department,
Right.
And then how is that handled?
Well, that violation is responded to by the police department. And then that violation, that if they were to cite the home or the residents or the renters, the tenants, or the owner, then that's reported to me, and that would go under the violations section of this ordinance.
Thank you. Anything that we missed in the overview of the ordinance? All right, we'll open up the public hearing. With that being said, anybody that wishes to address the mayor and council, please come forward. We may know each other, but go ahead and state your name and property address for the record. And then, like I mentioned before, if you haven't signed in, after you get done speaking, please sign in that book.
Good evening.
Come forward if you don't mind. We do know each other, but keep in mind this camera right here.
Okay, my name is Michael Hickman, live on Church Street. I live next door to the brew house. I guess y'all are familiar with that one. I'm not here to say I'm for or against short-term rentals. I'm here to give you the impact on me. 90% of the time, everything's fine. But it's that 10% is why I felt compelled to come here. In the past several months, I've consulted with my attorney due to a couple of events that happened during the summer as to what I can do to limit my liability. I've been instructed to post my property as no trespassing, which I've done. The next thing is, if I have the means, to put cameras up in my yard, which I've done. And the next thing is to have an insurance policy, which is the part that really ticks me off. I have to have $1 million liability policy in place because an incident happened last summer. It actually occurred twice. The first one was mine, the second one was of course. I have 3 German Shepherds. They're very well trained, they're very well mannered. They do not leave the yard under any circumstances. Jeff, you're familiar with my dogs. You know they don't leave the yard. And that's because of training. But when I wake up due to a ruckus in my yard, and there's a man low crawling from that property into my yard because he wants to rustle my dog, we have an issue. Fortunately for him, I was able to retrieve my dog. The part that came after that was he would not listen to my verbal commands. I'm former law enforcement. I'm used to giving commands, and then I'm used to following them up with action. Fortunately, before things could escalate anymore, level-headed folks from the house came out, retrieved him, took him back. The second incident was also trespassing. My dogs get agitated when they know something's going on that's not right. They start reacting. My wife goes outside. She has a confrontation with a renter. And it's because there were lightning bugs in my yard. It sounds minor, and I understand it. There were lightning bugs in my yard. The folks were from New Jersey. They hadn't seen lightning bugs. They wanted their kids to chase lightning bugs. I get it. But the response when my wife told them to leave the yard was beyond what it should have been, excuse me. It was confrontational, and basically we were told that they're paying over $400 a night, they can do what the F they want. That does not react well with me. Sorry, it's just not. That's not appropriate. It's not appropriate in a residential area. It's not appropriate anywhere. I moved, my dad bought that house in 1984. So we're talking nearly 40 years of being at that residence. I've had it for 10. I love the town of Berlin, born and raised here. I've lived 50 years in this town. It broke my heart to put a no trespassing sign in my yard. Broke my heart. And it's all because of a short-term rental next door to my house. I'm all for if you want to have a property and rent and do all that, that's up to you all. But this week in, week out, not knowing what you're getting, it's insane. I worked in Ocean City for my first career. And I always said, as a joke, if you don't like it this week, wait another week, it's going to turn over, you'll have something different. Well, that's exactly what I'm living with next door, and I don't like it. I gave it a chance for the first season. I had my run-ins, and that was only 2. There have been more. That's just my 2 cents on the matter, and I appreciate y'all's time.
We have a question.
Could you share the reasoning and justification behind the $1 million insurance that you are?
Because I have 3 German Shepherds, sir, and when I let them out, they're on a radio-controlled fence around my yard. I can control them leaving. I can't control what comes in my yard. And that is the reason behind it. The incident with my wife, there were small kids in my yard, and this is after dark. So if they had gone first, I don't know what would have happened. And that's just my other day. We've never had an incident. I don't know what would happen. It's that what if factor that comes into play. I'm not willing to jeopardize my home that my family has paid for over years and years and years, and I'm currently paying for. I'm not going to jeopardize that because some short-term rental next door doesn't have respect for my property and comes onto my property, violates my trust and the peace, and gets bit by a dog. It's that simple.
So you have to have insurance for folks that may come on your property.
That's correct. It's a $1 million liability umbrella is what it's called.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just want to say, I've walked by your house many, many times. I see your dogs out there all the time, and they're very well behaved.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. A lot of hard work. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
We can just take them one at a time.
How you doing, guys?
Just name, we know each other, name, property address.
My name is Ryan Nellens. I live at 26 Broad Street. Short statement. So, Mike, I'm sorry to hear that, man. That's awful. So, a lot of the people that are running these things, these people, the realtors, the property owners, seem to be, from what I see online, arguing that they're going to be contributing to the town with these short-term rentals. They're going to bring people and their money into town, people that'll keep Berlin cool, and spend money at stores and restaurants, and they tell us they're doing us a favor. I don't see that being the case. I see folks that are gonna bring their own groceries from Baltimore, Philly, and eat in. I see empty houses in the off-season. And if you've ever been to Fenwick Island in the wintertime, you know what that looks like. I see the erosion of our community as growing families are priced out of year-round rentals, which don't make enough money. I see the older members of our community without neighbors that can shovel the snow from their driveway or bring their trash bins up from the curb when it's been raining. They're gonna be capitalizing on our work, on your work. These rentals wouldn't be worth the fight they're putting up if Berlin needed them. The people who want this aren't helping make Berlin cool. Berlin was cool. Berlin is cool without that help. Berlin is a good place to raise your kids without that help. Berlin is a good place to grow old and enjoy the incredible community that we have created without that help. For the sake of my kids and my family and our community, I oppose these kinds of short-term rentals. Please include the owner-occupied provision. Thank you.
We know each other, just name and property address.
Ann Powell, Nancy Avenue. I do have one question. On reading the ordinance in previous, one thing that I did not hear is that.
Excuse me.
Oh, you turn the mic forward.
No, you're good, just turn the mic.
Okay. Your folks can't hear you, but.
Thank you.
Sure. The one thing that I hadn't heard when speaking of past readings or writings of the ordinance was owner-occupied clause for R1 and R2 districts. And it was in there. I sat right here at this table and heard you guys say it was in there. And then unfortunately, last meeting, I was unable to make it, but home with the stomach virus, watching it on my iPad, freaking out, screaming, and the way you were spoken to was beyond. But anyway, I don't know why it's not mentioned that it was in and it's not in there anymore. But I just think it's important to note that it was there. And I would just ask that you protect our small neighborhoods, our small town living, what we're used to. If there's a need, if you feel the need for businesses like Airbnbs in our neighborhoods, it must be owner occupied, making the owner responsible, not our police department for all the little petty calls. They're overworked, understaffed enough. It's just, we purchased homes in R1, R2 zones because we want stable neighborhoods. I know all my neighbors. I watch out for all my neighbors. The fact that someone could sell and then have transient people weekly coming in is very uncomfortable for me. I'm by myself a lot. I have 2 other single ladies in the neighborhood and some elderly couples that were very uncomfortable with the Airbnb situation that was going on in our neighborhood. Now, I do understand they did it incorrectly and all that, and I'm not bringing that up because that's not what this is about. But I would just ask that you please put back in the owner-occupied clause. Thank you.
Name and property address. It was
We
funny
do
because
know each other.
we do know each other, but a slight aside, this gentleman's daughter works for the town of Berlin, but I said, I haven't seen JJ in a while. And
Well,
she said, I doubt you would recognize
unfortunately,
him. Well, it's okay. But she said, I doubt you would recognize him. And
Yeah.
she's probably right.
James. So my name is James Walsh, I live at 3 Walsh Lane. And I'm here to discuss the Airbnb concern. There is a house that is obviously operating under that umbrella. It's on 115 Branch Street. But I think I'm going to talk more kind of globally than just a particular piece of property. But before I get started, I mean, I'm a retired first responder, public safety employee. I echo Mike Hickman's concerns. But I also understand that within the umbrella of executive sessions, sometimes these deals are already struck. And it's after the fact that we touch base with the citizens to kind of just check the box when the decision perhaps has already been made. So I hope that's not the case here in terms of the Airbnb issue. I'm sure it's not, but it's
Just
just
to
my
clarify,
experience with public government.
just to clarify, there are specific parameters that we can meet in executive for, and this is not one of those. So all the meetings regarding short-term rentals have been held publicly.
I appreciate that. So, Mr. Mayor, town council members, family and friends, I'm here before you to express my concerns regarding the rapid increase of Airbnbs and the current request for applications within the R1 and R2 districts of the town of Berlin. Over the years, our town has struggled with an aging infrastructure, an increase in service deliverables such as garbage removal, providing electrical power, water and sewage treatment requirements, along with an increased request for police and fire assistance. The cost burden associated with these necessities comes on the backs of our citizens, the retirees, the elderly, and the young who are just starting careers and their families. It's painful enough that we are double taxed providing funding to the town of Berlin as well as Worcester County, but all we see as the end user is an increase in taxes with a decrease in service. My words aren't anti-Airbnb, but they are more in line with establishing clear guidelines and requirements for commercial businesses, enforcing the established code of the town of Berlin, but more importantly, having an understanding of the adverse impact it will have in our residential neighborhoods, such as unforeseen or intentional property damage, and the additional burden of those who provide the funding, our citizens, for the continued operation of this alluring town. Yes, the town of Berlin needs to continue to evolve, but the town is the proverbial 10-pound bag, and we cannot continue to try and put 20 pounds of politics, new ideas, and new businesses in this bag before we suffer catastrophic damage. There is certainly a cost-benefit associated with the Airbnb businesses, one in which the town greatly could benefit from in terms of an increased revenue stream. But you as the town council need to do the right thing and allow these up-and-coming businesses to flourish in the business districts and hold them accountable to their agreed-upon requirements. This could be a win-win situation for all parties involved. In 2019, we were voted the coolest town in Maryland. If you can predict the problem, you can prevent it. And there's a lot of people and a lot of citizens who have predicted problems. You have now been made aware of some of those problems, and you have the power to prevent them. Don't let our residential district become the new inner city drain on our resources. Balance the requirements of the town with your constituents who voted each of you into office to represent them. That's all I have on that particular matter. So I'm also here to ask that you provide the town employees a pay raise that they much well deserve. Thank you. So I'm here for questions.
Yes, come on up. Name and property address, please.
Carol Jacobs. Property is 307 Bay Street and also 305 Bay Street. I've been following the mayor and council's attempt to put some regulations in on Airbnbs for the last 2 years. I have sent written comments to the council members and to the mayor, and I just want to go on the record as saying I support the ordinance as you have written it, and that's before us today or this evening, to require that you can only have a short-term rental if the resident agent also lives in the house would, in my opinion, defeat the entire purpose of an Airbnb. All you're doing is allowing maybe a bedroom or 2 bedrooms in your house with you living there, and that's not what most people are seeking when they want a vacation time with their families. So I totally support what you have written here. I think some of the problems that the town has experienced, that the that the people have come before you to explain, are problems that this ordinance will help correct. So I think you've done a fine job with it. I support it, and I again, thank you.
Name and property address, please.
Yes. Hello there, my name is Tony Lee, 302 Bay Street. I too have thought about this a lot. have thought about this from every angle possible. I've spoken to everybody on all angles and all sides of this issue. And to be very clear, I myself am a capitalist, an entrepreneur, and someone who loves his freedom, and also owns a condominium in Ocean City. So I intrinsically understand this business front to back. Why I mention this is that my perspective lends a lot of experience, and experience in this situation is key. Knowing that it's a business, and that we don't let businesses operate in our residential sections, sort of makes it quite clear that it's an obtuse position for a business to be in. There's not a pizza shop next door to my house in our district. There's a house on either side and across the street. And families live in all of them. Condo owners do not expect anyone to buy their condo or be in their condo and expect families next door. They expect it to be a rotating situation. And that's how that is. And that's what Ocean City's built for. And I hope that you can see the difference between Berlin and Ocean City. We're not that condo rows and condo rows of transient people coming in and out who are awesome people. Don't get me wrong, they're awesome people. I've traveled the world and stayed in Airbnbs. I know what it's like, and I know I've never met a single person that lives next door to a single Airbnb. They're not coming to say hi to us. We're on a different schedule. We're partying. We're out there to have fun. That's just how it is. I also understand that my freedoms in society don't extend past myself. With that, I also live in a neighborhood. And with that, we have standards, and we adhere to those standards so that we do not affect our neighbors in our neighborhood. All of these things sort of impinge on my freedom to do whatever the hell I want. I'd love to have a pig farm and a nightclub at my house, but I can't. If I could have moved here 10 years ago and funded that house with a pig farm and a nightclub, because I want to run a business there, well shit, I would have done it. That brings me to tonight. I think that the inclusion of an owner-occupied provision in the ordinance is a crucial step, one that was there, discussed, taken out in a silo of sorts, and now we're all here to tell you something. We want it back. We want the humans that live here and want to invest their family and their life here. If that disappears, the small town thing that everybody loves disappears. And our R1, R2 districts become enterprise zones for anyone to come in and set up a business of any sort and finance their investment. Because that's what we've told them it's okay to do. I don't think that that's the premise of buying a house in a neighborhood. You don't just... That's not why we bought into this amazing town, and that's not why we work every day to keep it as amazing as it is. I thank you for your time. And just to note, Michael's dogs are the nicest dogs I have ever seen.
Name and property address, please.
My name is Devin Boisine. I own a property at 113 Cedar Avenue and 114 Maple Drive. I'd like to thank the mayor and the town council for letting us all speak today. I purchased my first home in Berlin in 2016 and my second home where I now reside in 2019. To state my position, I am pro allowing non-occupied STRs to operate even in R1 and R2. Full transparency, I do not operate an STR, however I do own an investment property in R1, and I feel that as a property owner and a local taxpayer, that I should have the right to short-term rent my property should I choose. That being said, however, I fully understand the need for regulation to ensure that STRs do not negatively impact residents nor the town, but it needs to be done in a feasible and logical manner that does not overstep personal property rights. One of the main concerns I see coming from the public is the possibility of private equity companies coming in and purchasing the home for short-term rentals, and I absolutely agree that this needs to be addressed. And while I'm opposed to outside companies operating STRs in town, if individuals want to purchase investment properties, they should have the option to operate them as STRs so long as they do so with respect to their neighbors. There has to be a way to draft legislation that will protect the town, but also allow individuals to operate these short-term rentals. Another talking point by the pro-banking side is that they want to conserve small town values and integrity of Berlin by prohibiting STRs. I understand that many of these people espousing these notions are doing so with the best of intentions, but the reality is, it's simply a feel-good, emotional-based platitude that's easy to regurgitate. And pulling on heartstrings like this is effective, because it's impossible to challenge, because it's completely subjective. What small town values mean to one person might be completely something else to another person. Ultimately, there's no way to measure this in an objective way that is fair and just. I feel when it comes to drafting legislation, it needs to be based on variables that are measurable and quantifiable. Regulation should not be based on people's subjective personal preferences. What this all boils down to is the discussion of negative rights. The right to do with what you want with the property that you own. So long as the guests are following the current rules of the town and not interfering with others, it should not matter who is staying in the home, let alone for how long. At a certain point, there needs to be a separation here of what people's personal preferences for the town are and what is within bounds of the local government in dictating what property owners can do with their own property. Just because you want something doesn't mean you're entitled to it. I want both Chinese restaurants here in town to be open on Sunday, but I'm not going to demand the council to force them to be open. Listen, for the most part, no one wants Berlin to be Ocean City. We all understand that what a gem the town of Berlin is, and we don't want to turn this into a party town. But there are already regulations on the books that prevent that from happening. Noise complaints, for instance, prohibit people from partying throughout the night and interfering with neighbors' sleep. As I've mentioned before, I'm not opposed to STRs having some type of regulation and guidance, and I would like to propose some suggestions. Now keep in mind, I'm not a politician or a civil servant, therefore I'm not even sure if these suggestions are possible. I just hope that it might spark an idea for somebody more experienced than I am. A strike system for which if the owner of the property has guests that violate rules, they'll be fined, and after X amount of strikes, that owner will lose their standing. Number 2, limit the amount of Airbnb permits and or grant approval on a case-to-case basis to ensure that there are no outside companies able to operate. And last, individuals must not be involved with private equity company, again, to ensure that it's individuals owning these properties. To finish up, to my fellow residents, I truly hope that we as a community can come together in a civil manner and figure out a way to regulate these issues that is digestible to all the residents of Berlin in a fair manner. Now, to the council and the mayor, I commend the spirit and passion of all the anti-STRs that are in attendance today, but the simple fact of the matter is there's roughly 45,000 people who live in town limits, which means there's about 4,000 of those residents that are indifferent to the matter at most. This belief that there's a widespread opposition to STRs simply does not extend to the majority of Berlin residents. If it did, there would be 4,500 people in this room tonight, but there's not. The opposition being shown is by an extremely vocal few, and I'm sure many of you have seen the Facebook posts, have a couple hundred comments, but the vast majority are coming from the same people over and over again. While Facebook posts and comments should be taken into consideration, they should not be an indication of majority sentiment. I hope that when you're listening to all these complaints about STRs that you stop and ask yourself, is this something that could transpire with a permanent resident or a long-term renter? Is this an issue with short-term rental business model? Or is this an isolated incident with a bad host and or guest? Does the local government have the right to dictate what personal property owners can do based on a small faction of people's personal preferences? Is the responsibility of the local government to ensure that everyone that lives in town all share the same values? I trust that all of you, being the seasoned politicians as you are able to distinguish between the ardent, passionate complaints of a few and what is the rest of the community wants. Policies and regulations should never be constructed based on a small vocal minority and strictly based on measurable, quantifiable data. Thank you. And just for the record, Mr. Hickman, you absolutely should not have had to deal with anything like that, and I hope that we can ensure that nobody else has to deal with a situation like that, and that shouldn't be, that should not happen.
Todd Martinek, 308 Dan Drive. I'm also, I live there, but I'm also lived next door to a short-term rental for a while, and I still have one 2 doors away. And Mr. Hickman, I managed the brew house. So I personally apologize for that, and I wish I would have known, but I already have a plan in my mind I'd like to talk to you about. I never talked to Mr. Hickman, really. I've seen him out in the yard with the dogs, and I do like the dogs as well. But I guess the last two guys really summed up all my facts. They made great points. The only thing that wasn't on there is I would like to describe the demographic. I manage several in Berlin, and I manage several in Ocean City. I went back and reviewed 322 Berlin stays, and the demographic of my Berlin stays are 36 years old with 1.6 children. That demographic in Ocean City are vastly different. I didn't even bother looking that up, plus I don't have the time. But the people that come here love Berlin. If they want to party, this is not where they come. There might be a few bad apples, as there are in our own residence. I think I've had the sheriff to my house more than all my rentals combined. Sorry, Sheriff. But with that being said, I think you're doing a good job because a compromise doesn't make any side extremely happy. I'm a manager and my owners aren't extremely happy. I'm also a community member. I'm not extremely happy. So it seems like you guys have done a good job. So with that, I thank you for making a few changes and listening to some of the earlier input. I appreciate your work. I just wanted to speak out on that. Thank you.
Name and property address, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Bronwyn Betts. I live at 506 William Street.
I thought it was important to come here and take time away from my family tonight because I think that this is an extremely important thing to regulate, short-term rentals, and I also think that the town residents should be the #1 voice as we're the #1 stakeholders in the town. I oppose unregulated and unfettered growth of short-term rentals in the town. I think it's reasonable to have the owner occupied provision put back in. I value my privacy, the status quo of my neighbors that I know and I trust. I can rely on them in emergencies. If they see my kids out there, they can tell me something's up. And for most of us, our homes are a huge investment for ourselves. And to have that endangered is very scary to me. We've heard from a lot of other people in the town who are currently dealing with negative situations to do with their proximity to a short-term rental. So I just urge you to consider how the regulations will protect us as homeowners or long-term renters. Will we continue to have committed individuals as our neighbors? Or over time, and perhaps many years, this could take a long time, will it erode the community? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the mayor and council this evening?
We're allowed to do a follow-up question?
What's that?
Are we allowed to do a follow-up question?
Yes, let's make sure that everybody has a chance, but then we can always do that as time permits. Yes, just name and property address.
Neely Chester, and I own 11 Burley Street. And so I looked over the way it's written. I'm for it. I think it's a great idea. I think we're ahead of the curve. And I understand there's a lot of issues that have been going on. Just so you know how I run my Airbnb, I have a lot of strict guidelines, and we do vet some of the renters. And we haven't had any problems at all whatsoever. Just some of the questions I have with what we have written is the parking ordinance that's written in here, is that current with law, like the current law with everything? Or is it just
I'm gonna defer to our planning director, Dave Engelhardt.
Yeah, it's concurrent with the current off-street parking regulations. Dwelling unit requires 2 off-street parking spaces. So what we said here was 1 additional off-street parking space per each bedroom rented shall be required in addition to the parking required in the zoning strip where it's located.
Okay, so I got 3 bedrooms, and just to clarify, so I need 6 parking spaces total.
No, you need 3.
3. Okay. Off street.
Each additional from the 2 would be off-street parking, correct, not on the street.
Airbnb, when I looked into it, Todd, I don't know if you looked into this or not. Airbnb, it says that we need, and the way you guys wrote it, that we need the renter's home address. I don't think we have access to that.
No, not unless there's a complaint.
Okay.
Not unless we follow.
So we need to figure that one out.
And I believe what you're referencing is that the application requires the home address.
No, yeah, I think it, and I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, just if you find the section, then we'll know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I believe it may be in licensing.
Property owner shall maintain a record of the names of all lodging guests who stay at the property, including their address, phone number, email address.
So that's in records, right?
Well, don't you receive that when bookings are done, reservations are
Can
done?
I speak on that?
Go ahead, Todd.
So Airbnb and VRBO will provide you their name and phone number. You email through the applications on a separate email, so I didn't look that much into it, but unless you have a claim against them, which I've never had a claim, but if you have a claim, then it goes to their address. You get the information with a claim. So that might be a little bit much to ask for.
Well, it says the property owner shall maintain a record. That's what number 8 says, not you're coughing it up to the town every time you rent it. But should the town need it for an issue, just like the owner, then you have to provide it.
I think some of that is hidden due to their anonymity. I think that you get their phone number, picture, address. They provide things to Airbnb in case there's a legal matter. So
So do you get so explain this. So you get a name, a phone number. A picture, what else?
You can ask them for other things, but they can lie to you other than the documents they provided to Airbnb, which you don't have.
So then if you had to go back and reference it, is there a certain number, like a confirmation number that's
Yes,
associated with that?
all that's done. And all your emails are saved for.
So maybe that's something that we do in lieu
It
of
might just be
something.
hard for owners to provide that to the town.
But you could maintain those lists of.
You're to maintain a record, not
the town.
Not the town.
No, what we're saying is that if you guys, we'll maintain the records, but if there's an issue, then we don't have access to that address. How do we go about it?
That's the only thing we don't have.
Their home address, how do we get it? If Airbnb doesn't provide it.
Ask your renter. All right, hold on.
I'm actually shocked you don't have that.
Hold on,
Yeah, it's Airbnb, they don't.
Hold on. In an effort so that everybody has a chance to speak and everybody can hear what's being said, plus the meeting's recorded. So people right over here have to take notes and make sure that that's a maintained record.
Okay.
So when you're speaking, let's keep it one at a time.
Gotcha.
So I want to get back to this issue of what information is provided when somebody rents a property. There is an identifiable number with each stay. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what piece of information is under records that is not something that is provided by the app?
The home address for the tenant.
So where it says including their address, that is not information that could be obtained.
It could be if there was probably an issue. Is that right, Todd?
It would be an issue.
So we
If
will,
I can ask a question, if the town had a sufficient issue to lodge a complaint, would that not be then enough issue
Yeah,
for you to get that
I would
information?
assume, yeah, I'm not an attorney for Airbnb, so I would assume. So,
we will take that into consideration. Thank you.
yeah, and then, just curious, I never got this information. How many 911 calls do we have? You know?
We're gonna have to defer to the chief of police and the planning director for that.
Well, last year approximately 3.
Three.
To our knowledge.
Written complaints, would that be
No, it's not a written complaint. We're actually talking.
about 911
And
calls?
the answer is 3 locations. One location has had several calls.
Okay.
So we'll clarify that.
Okay.
Mike?
And so, at the end of this, sorry, but I'm all for this. The only other thing that I'm gonna have a problem with is the owner occupied provision. I'm totally against it. Last but not least, I've had it for 2 years now. I haven't had any issues, and actually my neighbors are here, and I'd like to call them up if that's okay, just to give their few cents there.
Anybody that wishes to speak, we'll take it one at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Just come forward, name and property address.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Mead. We reside at 13 Burley Street. We've owned that property for over 30 years. We live next door to 11 Burley Street, which has been used as an Airbnb. I can honestly say that we have not had an issue. I agree that they must be doing a very thorough job of vetting the people that rent that property.
I look at it as a positive thing. It's actually kind of fun to look at the cars and see the children that are coming out, or if it's a young couple, and then you watch them get out of the car and you go in the house and then they get out and they take a stroll uptown. I see it as a positive thing for people that want to visit our town. I mean, we went to all that trouble to advertise what a cool location we are, and we could only expect that people would want to come and visit us. I don't know your personal experiences with Airbnb, if you had the opportunity to vacation. I know Airbnb lends itself better for families. We've partaken of Airbnb vacations as a family in the past. It allows you to select a home based on the size of your family. It allows you to all gather together and eat meals under the same roof. I find it to be a very positive experience. As a matter of fact, we're benefiting from Dealey's property. Our daughter's getting married this summer, and some of the close family members that would be attending will be renting that property so that they're right next door to us, and that's very convenient.
Thank you. Yes, just name and property address, please.
Laura Stearns, 102 South Main. I live across from an Airbnb that is rented from the very same, well, it's from Todd. Todd also does Mrs. Neeb's property. And I wasn't gonna come up here, but I've had the exact opposite problem. You know, the brew house is named the Brew House. Would you want to live across from an Airbnb named the Brew House? I mean, it brings just people that want to party. You can buy a keg and have it tapped right in there. We've had nothing but, you know, week after week, you just never know what you're going to get. We've had big, huge parties with liquor tents. I've already written about that. Then we had what would seem innocent would be a baseball team. But once you get that amount of kids on one piece of property, the problem with it is all these places that they're renting, they're not owner occupied, and they're in R1. So when it's not owner occupied, that means it's a business. So it's people like me that have to live next door to a business in an R1 zone. That's the problem. You know, I've called the police several times. Do I want to live my life like that? I moved here from Ocean City, where I live next door to apartments that were constantly having parties. I just think it's something everybody needs to consider, that if you allow it, it could be next door to you. Who knows when your neighbor could sell a house? The next thing you know, you're gonna have, you know, an Airbnb sitting right next to you, where every week it's somebody else. I enjoy the town of Berlin, the small, neighborly way it is, where we all know each other, where people take care of their houses, where it's pride of ownership. When it's a rental, there's no pride of ownership. There's, you know, porch furniture that's all messed up on the front. There's not pretty flowers. There's just not pride of ownership. And for those reasons, I'm asking for you to make it owner occupied, which doesn't mean that the owner has to rent out a room in their house. It means that if you happen to have a rental unit on your property, you could rent it out, because then it would be monitored. And I also am a person that, you know, I don't want to be told what to do with my property. But at the same time, it's a quality of life that we've come to know here in Berlin that I would like to see continue.
Name and property address, please.
I'm Glenn Davis. I live at 200 South Main Street, Berlin. I'm going to reiterate a lot of what Laura just said. My wife and I moved here after living in Bethany Beach, Delaware for 20 years. So I have a different perspective, a different experience with short-term rentals. And in my opinion, the renters had no interest in the community. They came in multiple cars each week. They would exceed the number of people living in the unit. They snuck in pets, and they'd have late night, every night parties. on their leaving. They would leave at the end of the week with overflowing trash cans, just in time for the cycle to begin again and start all over. I think the concept of self-policing violations by the neighbors is impractical and ineffective. I think the fact that you only had 3 calls, I think people just acquiesce and they just endure it, which is a shame. My wife and I chose to move here because my son and daughter-in-law and grandson live and work in town. We made a substantial investment in a property that was previously an eyesore in the community and have lovingly restored it to be our home. What attracted us to Berlin was that it was a community of families. A community of families that work in the shops and the restaurants, a community of families that volunteer at the Calvert Museum, the fire station, and the local library. A community of families whose children go to our schools and play in our parks and our playgrounds. I actually take exception to coastal realtors who, several meetings back, were allowed to come in and express their opinions, who don't live in the town, and were allowed to come in and express their opinion as to what our community is to be like. I think that rather than assisting investors with their rental businesses, we should be trying to attract families and first-time homeowners who will continue to promote the community of families that has made Berlin attractive to all of us. I thank you for your consideration. I would hope that you would, at the very least, make all of these be owner-occupied. Thank you.
Yes, just name and property address, please.
Hello, good evening. I am Nicole Masoner. I'm at 106 Ann Court. And I didn't have anything prepared, but just listening to everybody, I was struck by the comment about community. And in my former life before having children, I used to kind of engage in scholarly articles about community. And they are indeed measurable. And one factor is walking distance to a good ice cream shop. But there are ways to, I think, really evaluate the quality of a community. And I think the fears that some of us have are the kind of turnstile and growth, possibly, of, you know, living next to a short-term rental and not having permanent neighbors, but it evolving or revolving, kind of the revolving door. And so I think, again, the fear is, at what point do we stop? You know, the few handful, or I don't know exactly how many our town has right now, I looked it up, but I think we're just nervous about how many would, you know, happen and what that means for the town. That's it.
Thank you. Just name and property address, please.
Good evening. Keith Sargent, 23 Westminster. I believe you met my wife in the past. I'm here to support short-term rentals with town regulation, which I'll elaborate on later. My wife and I, we purchased a second home in Berlin for mainly one reason, to be close to family. We have family in this town that has lived here for many, many years, and we love coming here. This is a great community. We've had Christmases here, holidays, birthday parties, graduations, vacations. We definitely love this town and what it has to offer. The opportunity for us to buy here came under pretty unique circumstances. The home directly behind my sister-in-law was put on the market after issues with the current resident. That resident was shooting off air pistols, other firearms in the backyard, and it put a lot of concern and fear into the surrounding neighbors. After a police raid, that house was put on the market after only about 6 months with that owner. The home was on the market for 3 full months, which in this market is kind of an eternity, I think. But before we made our offer, the home is less than 1,000 square feet. It has 2 small bedrooms and only 1 little bathroom, likely making it unappealing to most families with, you know, multiple children. It also sits high on the foundation. There's steps leading in there, which may not be good for an older couple. So we think that's maybe why it was on the market for a little while. So to us, it seemed like a great opportunity to have a small home immediately next to town. I mean, literally our back property lines abut. My wife and I, we've used Airbnb for many years. We love it, and we have young children now, and quite honestly, there's no other way to lodge than Airbnb. And if you have kids, you might understand that. Hotels, sometimes little kids, they're not the best. We've enjoyed all of our Airbnb experiences, and because of this, we want to return the favor to other short-term renters, because we've had great experiences ourselves, and we want to be able to provide other renters with a great experience here in the town. When we got the house, it was in subpar condition when we purchased it. Throughout 2022, we completely remodeled the interior. We did significant work to the exterior, including a new privacy vinyl fence. We put in a new roof. We put in a new HVAC system. We landscaped the yard. We improved the driveway. We improved the grass. We continue to employ local businesses as well through the Airbnb for property maintenance such as lawn mowing, landscaping, weed control, cleaning. All these people, including the contractors that helped us with the remodel, of course, they happily took our checks, and we appreciated supporting them. They're great, great people. There's also still a lot of improvements that we want to do over the home in the next few years. So in short, we took a home that was in subpar condition. We made it very desirable, we feel. We improved the home, which improved the neighborhood, which improves the town. So this in itself, we feel like is really mending the fabric of the community and keeping it great. Furthermore, we have a lot of skin in the game here, of course. We've invested in the house itself. A home is a big investment, lots of money there. We put a lot of money into the improvements. And we pay property taxes just like anybody else here. So a lot of skin in the game for us. So to me, it makes complete sense that the town would regulate this to prohibit developers from taking over the town. I don't want to see that, and nobody else here, it sounds like, wants to see that either. I support having a thorough application process, having a more costly application fee, do preliminary annual inspections, clear life safety rules, clear conduct rules. I support all of that. It makes sense to me. What I don't support is making kind of a big deal out of nothing. I think the thing that I observe here is that maybe we're making a mountain out of a molehill. Right here we have, in my quick research, I saw that we had roughly 20 short-term rentals here in the Berlin city limits, roughly 20. That's a hard thing to kind of determine because a rental in Ocean Pines could tag Berlin, so if you search Berlin, you might get a rental in Ocean Pines. But within the city limits, it appears to be about 20. And there's about 21 total homes in Berlin, or residences in Berlin, not residents, but residences in Berlin. So when you do the math, that's less than 1% of the homes here in Berlin that are short-term rentals. And if I recall from past meetings, which I think the chief kind of indicated here, the complaints have been minimal. I'm an engineer, I'm a numbers guy, I would love to know how many literal rentals there have been over the course of the last year compared to the number of complaints there's been. I'm sure the percentage is very, 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 very low. So to me, this doesn't scream for immediate outlaw of short-term rentals. Again, if you carefully regulate it, I think they can exist here successfully. And you're going to accommodate many, many great families in this great town. And so lastly, I want to make one statement here. Short-term renters, they're not the enemy. They're all good people like us. We vet the people that come through. We've set up our home for a family. We have bunk beds in there for little kids. So every renter that we've had come through, for the most part, except for maybe one or two, they've been family with small children. And they've all indicated that they've absolutely loved it. The people who own short-term renters are not the enemy either. We're great people. And we just want to support the community. And again, we love this community, and we want to do whatever we can to help it be successful. There's a lot of bad eggs in the world. I get that. They could be permanent residents. They could be long-term renters. They could be short-term renters. They could be people passing through the community. So however you slice it, there's always going to be people that are going to cause a problem, no matter who it is or what their status is in the town. So anyway, that's it, all I have. Thank you for your time. Appreciate your consideration. Again, we're in support. Thank you very much.
Do we have any others? If not, we can take the follow-up question. You want me to come up there? Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Just name and property address, please.
Lindsay Parker, 203 Graham Avenue. But this is kind of in reference to 204 West Street, which was my previous residence. I was a first-time home buyer in 2016, and I just want to share my experience as an Airbnb host for the past 5 years. I've been renting my previous residence from 2017 to 2021. I've hosted a total of 118 reservations, which may place me at some of the highest number of rentals within the town of Berlin. Of the 118 reservations, 22 of those reservations included couples, defined as a party of 2 people in a relationship, either married or not. 65 of those reservations included families, defined as a group traveling together with children or multi-generations, including older parents or siblings. And 30 of those reservations included groups of friends, which may consist of couples or a group completely unrelated. All of the reservations that did not include families were screened to ensure guests were over the age of 21. This is a personal choice as a homeowner, as I also personally review every reservation request that comes in to make sure it's a good fit for both guests and myself. Some of the most common reservation requests I've received: family trips to Berlin, to the beach, sports tournaments, weddings, anniversaries. I had a family who brought their son who participated in the Fiddlers Convention multiple years, other Berlin activities, and then even some families who are coming for family reunions and they don't have room to stay in the house of those who live locally. Airbnb runs off reviews, so I often check to see if someone has previous reviews, as well as a general inquiry to ask why they're coming and what the reason. And this benefits me as a host, but also helps to screen to make sure guests won't disturb my neighbors or cause any issues within the town of Berlin. There's ample motivation for guests to be on their best behavior because they know hosts will rate them following their stay. In my 5 years as an Airbnb host, I've had 0 police encounters. I've had 0 complaints from any of my neighbors. The only issues I've had as a host were minor damages to a couch, a window, a screen, but the Airbnb guests took corrective action, and we remedied the situation ourselves. Overall, my experience with guests have been that they were respectful of my home and my neighbors. I even had someone who asked if they could light off fireworks from Walmart on New Year's Eve, and I was like, no, can't do it, like, just not allowed to. Anyway, guests, they often rave about their experience in the town of Berlin, whether it's eating, shopping, walking around, and they just rave about the quaintness of Berlin and how much they love it over the hustle and bustle of Ocean City. I will admit that parking was an issue at my house. It was also an issue when I lived there. The driveway can fit 1 car comfortably, 2 cars if lined up. Most guests brought 1 to 2 cars with them, but I never had any restrictions on parking. I didn't have any regulations for that. So I think if Berlin decided to add some kind of parking restriction, that's something that could be remedied. I'd also like to note the house was available all year, but a majority of the rentals occurred from May to September, while the house either sat vacant or occupied by myself. 3 out of the 5 years I lived there, 2 out of the 5 years I never moved back in. So it's hard for me to support the owner occupied because 2 out of the 5 years I wouldn't have been able to do it. I didn't know that I wasn't going to move back in. It was a decision based on where I was in my life. Short-term rentals allowed less direct wear and tear on my house and the ability to move back in whenever I pleased. Being able to rent the short-term rental, it helped me with extra income, helped me finish my master's degree, it helped me become a nurse practitioner, it helped me replace my roof, it helped me remodel and fix the house up, and I'm just forever grateful for the wonderful opportunity that's afforded me being able to rent my house. I hope the members of the town and this council can come to a reasonable solution for allowing short-term rentals with reasonable regulations that will benefit the town. The issue is complex. Short-term rentals can, in most cases, benefit neighborhoods, but I do agree that lawmakers and neighbors should use caution in how the regulations and what the ordinance shows. As a short-term rental host and neighborhood advocate, I would like to see locals, not out-of-town corporations, flourish within neighborhoods and benefit the town of Berlin as a whole. Thank you.
So you said it was rented 118 times,
Yes.
65 families, 30 groups of friends over 21. I missed the first statistic.
22 were couples.
22 were couples?
Yes.
And then I think you said something about married?
I
Or was it just couples?
I just defined it. Couples would be married or not.
Families either had to have multi-generations.
Okay.
And then when I said friends, it could have been 2 couples, but I kind of wanted just to break it down, so the statistics were in.
Now, are those standard demographics, or were those like specific things that you wanted to know about your property?
The screening process I went through, I asked what they were coming for. Most of the time when they request, they usually give a reason. And then if it was a group of friends, I always asked if everyone was above the age of 21. Again, that was personal for me. I felt like it helped me to, just to make sure that people weren't coming to party. I don't want anyone to come party in my house. That means if something gets messed up or broken, then I have to fix it. And so that was, but I wasn't going to discriminate against someone who wants to come to Berlin and have a good time.
Thank you for
So
clarifying
I
the
have a
statistics.
question for you. Like you said, you might be the person that has possibly rented the most here in Berlin, right? When you're renting, do you get the home address for the people who rent from you? What type of contact information are you requiring of the renters?
So through the Airbnb app, I do require that all renters have uploaded a ID card, like a driver's license. Yes. Now, I don't have personal access to that, but it is verified within the app itself. I don't know where they're coming from. I could very easily ask them. It doesn't really make a difference to me what their personal address is, but if I needed to find it out, I would.
But what I'm asking is, because you've rented the most, I'm just trying to find out if, for liability purposes, if you had a concrete way to get back in touch with that person rather than just an email or a cell phone number.
So,
that's all I was asking.
Okay, Airbnb has a resolution center that you have to go through for anything. So even if I spoke with somebody directly, it was a problem when I had to get the screen fixed. They can't just send me money. Like, everything is controlled through the app. So I go through the resolution center, I wrote what we talked about, I put in a price, and they paid me.
So you use the corporate, the Airbnb company, right?
Yes, yes.
But not everybody, I'm asking, I just want to clear that up with Davey. Not everybody that's renting or that's going to go through this process or that does currently, they're not all using these, whatever they're called, Airbnb, Virgo, I don't know what others are called. They're not, right?
No.
So that's where, I guess that's where the question, that's why I asked the question about contact info. So if you're not using these outside agencies who are filtering and being able to find the folks in case of liability, how does that, if they're not using it, if you're doing it privately, and there's no contact info, meaning address or whatever, concrete address to contact that person, how does that, and that's not direct to you, I only asked you that because
yes,
you've rented the most apparently, or
I mean, I can say personally, there's been times where someone's asked, can I stay an extra night? I'll give you some cash. And while that's all fine and dandy, if it's not through the app, then I'm not protected through Airbnb. And so I personally choose not to do that.
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we may have a little bit of a line, but that's okay.
No worries.
Come on up.
I'll talk here.
Okay. Just name and property address, please.
Hi, my name is Jamie Parker, and I live on 6 Westminster Drive. So I just wanted to share my experience as an Airbnb host as well. I'm writing this because I am pro short-term rentals in Berlin. I have been an Airbnb host for the past 2 out of 3 years with a total number of 41 reservations in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. I chose not to rent for 1 year due to COVID. However, of the 41 reservations, I've had mostly small families who were thrilled about getting a true experience of Berlin and the quaintness that it offers. Most guests are happy to be avoiding the hustle and bustle of Ocean City and see what America's cool small town is really all about. I've only experienced interest in my rental during prime season months, June, July, August, and September, and any months outside of this summer season have not gained much interest. Therefore, I occupy the house during this time. Due to the fact that we're a resort area, we all know that local businesses stay alive through
through these summer months. And as a local restaurant manager, I know that our business would not survive without tourism and people coming to spend money and to shop around during these times. Short-term rentals have aided in lifting these local Berlin businesses immensely, new and existing. I provide the guests with a list of some of my favorite local restaurants, bars, shops, and they have all raved about their experiences when visiting these places. I've had 0 complaints from my neighbors, as well as 0 police encounters. My neighbors have been nothing but supportive of this opportunity and my decision to rent. As a matter of fact, as a result of my rental, I've had one of my neighbors come to me and ask if I could host their very family during the holidays, and which I was able to, and it was just an awesome experience for them to have their family wake up down the street on Thanksgiving morning. I've also hosted more than one set of guests who were interested in moving to the area and wanted to get a true feel for what this town is really like. The guests were happy to have a local contact that can recommend local restaurants, activities, and help them with questions they might have. Regardless of the specific scenario, every reservation inquiry I received is screened. I read all past reviews that they may have, and if I feel uncomfortable or I feel it may not be a good fit for our town or for my home, then I decline the rental. Meanwhile, at the end of the accepted rentals, I give an honest review of each guest that stays, and I've had nothing but positive experiences and good reviews. As a local of this town my whole life and homeowner of this house for 3 years, this short-term rental has allowed me to afford living in my home as a single young adult during the months that I do not rent. Without this extra income, I don't know that I would be able to afford the biggest and proudest investment I've ever made. I've also been able to invest some of the money back into the house to make a few necessary fixes and upgrades that I would not have otherwise been able to manage. Although I'm an occupied homeowner, that I occupy the house, I'm still against this clause due to maybe down the road I would like to leave this home and keep it for visiting myself or allowing my family to visit, or to serve it as a rental, a short-term rental in the future as well. So that's where I stand. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Looks like we might have
Okay. That's the waiting chair.
That's on deck. Yes, just name and property.
Hi, I'm Debbie Cook. I live at 416 South Main Street. I really didn't want to come here and speak tonight, but I feel compelled to. I watched all the lead up to this and really liked the owner-occupied component of this ordinance and was really blown away that that was taken out. I still have never had an explanation as to why something that was in there all of a sudden went out. I have lived in Berlin 45 years on and off. I spent 20 years back in my hometown, Ocean City, as an Airbnb host. I had 3 buildings. I did a lot of rentals. I've done this business. I moved out of Ocean City to get away from that. I moved back to Berlin for what you have here in Berlin. I noticed that the people that are speaking for the Airbnb thing here are all people that have financial investment in that. And that's all well and good, but I think you should listen to those of us that don't have a financial investment, that came here for quality of life. Airbnb and short-term rentals are a business. Cut and dry, it's a business. It's a rental business in a residential neighborhood. It doesn't belong there. That's why we're here. That's why we love Berlin. That's why people come to Berlin. They come to visit to Berlin. You talk to people on the street. They come here because they like this idyllic little town. They love what we have. And this won't happen overnight, but 10, 15 years from now, that's going to be gone. Just like Ocean City, you're going to kill the goose that laid the golden egg. You're going to ruin our brand. Our brand is our hometown here, is our neighbors, and how we care for each other, and how you see people riding down the street with their kids on the back of the bike, and I can wait wave to people and say, how's your husband, how's your wife, how are you doing? That's what Berlin is. And if you erode that, you're gonna screw it up. So that's what I'm here to plead you to do for my children and my grandchildren. Thank you so much.
Name and property address, please.
I'm Ed Hammond. I live at 313 South Main Street, which is where I grew up. I'm trying to think where I can add value to this discussion because my opinions about this you've heard once before when the ordinance came up. I also sent a letter to the Coast Dispatch, which I hope you are aware of. If you're not, I will send you the text of that letter after I speak here. I think for me, the last speaker and the gentleman that lived at 200 South Main Street really put it best. I have operated an Airbnb in another city for 5 years. I like most of my Airbnb clients too, but this is not Berlin where this has happened. And the question is not whether it's a good apple or a bad apple that's renting the STR. I find that to be really a red herring of an issue that several people have brought up. The real issue here is the removal of housing stock from being a functional part of the community where families can live and where neighbors can relate to one another and where we can maintain the kind of community that we all want. And it's very clear, I've seen it in other places, and you can see it potentially happening in some areas of Berlin, where once you get too many of these operations running, you begin to gut the community and you begin to have problems. So I'm not going to repeat all of my arguments. Like I said, they're in that letter, and many other people have said them. I want to raise just a couple of additional issues that nobody else has raised that I think might be important. If I understand the ordinance correctly and Dave correctly, I could operate in perpetuity paying $600 a month as being an unlicensed Airbnb. Is that?
No, because it also says that the license can be revoked.
So, but if I don't have a license and I'm operating, what is the consequence? Because it seems to me that the level of fines and penalties that you were speaking of are really a cost of doing business. That if I operated, I want to understand, because see, if I operated the brew house since it came up, and I can operate and I can lease that for $300, $400, $500 a night, 25, 30 nights a month, I would treat a $600 fine as just the cost of doing business. So that I'm concerned about, that there, and maybe I misunderstand the legislation, but I think that's an issue to pay attention to, that there needs to be a sufficiently high penalty for non-compliance that you're really going to ensure that people aren't just going to pay a few $100 a month because they're making thousands every month. I also continue to think that while it may not be an issue right now, that you should take a look at regulating the number of Airbnbs that can exist in apartments. And that I think that they should be permitted non-owner occupied in some circumstances in apartments, in commercial and in R3 and R4, but I think that there should be a cap. Because I could foresee a situation where, again, as we were talking about, like years down the line, we start to take too much housing off of the local market and start using it for short-term visitors. A couple of final points. Just one speaker brought up this question of, well, maybe if we just keep the investors out, we'll be okay. I'm not an attorney. I don't understand a lot of this stuff really well, but my intuition tells me that you can't craft an ordinance that works like that. So what goes for one person is going to go for the outside investor too. So it's a nice idea, but I don't think that it works. Finally, this issue of and I was concerned by the reaction I saw on the podium, what the Airbnb information the Airbnb app provides to a host is not the limits of what the town of Berlin can ask. And there's simply no reason why, in a regulated setting, an Airbnb host can't ask for that information to comply with the ordinance. So the idea that we would scale back and create our ordinance in the town of Berlin to accommodate the Airbnb app, I find ridiculous. And finally, I think to some of the concerns, I often find myself when I hear people, talking about, some of the benefits of the financial income from Airbnbs, I really wonder, a lot of this can be done renting traditionally, and there's nothing that prevents, owners of two houses from renting traditionally. It's really just the particularities of short-term rental that we're talking about here. And so I would sort of turn the question on some of those folks and say, what is it that you can't get by renting in a more traditional way when you get a longer-term resident in the unit who's going to be more of a functional part of the community? Those are my comments. Thank you.
Just name and property address, please.
Carol Rose, 307 Ann Drive. And I just have real quick, I'm glad to see there's so many folks at our meeting to discuss this issue. However, I want to follow up with what Edward was saying. Our 204 West Street lady that had the most rentals in the town, it seems like she sold the property in July of 21 to, I would assume, some sort of rental investor in Salisbury that's an LLC. So she bought the property to live in and she rented it, and now it belongs to an LLC. And this is what we're trying not to do to these homes. So her testimony, I'm sure, was fine about all her rentals, but she doesn't even own the property anymore. So I'm not so sure that people that don't own property or live in Whaleyville or Salisbury or so forth should really be trying to tell us what to do here. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Just name and property address, please.
Brian Robertson, 103 Broad Street. I don't have anything prepared, but I have a few concerns and thoughts. First, I agree with Debbie's definition of a business and a residential zone. And as a father, I'm just more comfortable allowing my daughter to play in the backyard than I know who lives around us. If there's 500 to 1,000 new residents per year in a house that's next door, I'm not going to feel comfortable letting her go outside and play in the swing by herself. And on a more tangible note, I think we need to pay attention to what's going to happen to long-term rentals when short-term rentals start taking over. Because if they're making $400 a night, they're going to make a month's rent in a weekend, and we're going to lose our long-term rental stock. And the last time I checked, this town wasn't built by people who can afford $700,000 homes, and it wasn't made cool by people who can afford to rent that much. And if you're gonna portray yourself as this art-centric town, artists can't afford to stay, can't afford to live here. And that long-term rental is going to push into other neighborhoods outside of Berlin, and it's just going to become a sort of gentrification. And yes, there aren't many. There aren't a lot of short-term rentals right now in downtown Berlin. There's 20 of them. But they didn't just crop up in a long period of time. This just happened over the last handful of years. it's something that turned over quickly. So, what's gonna happen in, 5, 10, 20 years from now? I think something that both sides of this argument can come away with tonight is that no one wants a commercial operator, and I would really suggest a cap or token system. The other thing is that, there aren't 4,500 people in this room tonight for either side of this argument, so I would hope you aren't swayed by who can clap the loudest. That's
JJ, I think you have a follow-up. Oh, do we have a new hand? Just name and property address.
Hi, I'm Barb Stack, 6 Washington Street. Thanks for taking the time to let me talk. I am a resident of almost 30 years. I don't know where it went, but I've loved this town for many, many years. I am not a fan of the new changes to the ordinance. The short-term rentals really need to be owner-occupied. The ordinance talks about protecting and maintaining the integrity of the neighborhoods, but the R1 and R2 zones make up almost 80% of our zoning map in Berlin. We will become more like Ocean Pines than we are Berlin. Ocean Pines of 20 years ago. Ocean Pines has become more year-round residence. I've done many additions and renovation designs over there. And they're all moving down here permanently at this point. If we become more like Ocean Pines, we're going to have the Ocean Pines Saturday traffic situation. Is that what we want in our town? 60 Minutes on CBS TV recently had a segment on the rising rental prices and investment corporations buying up properties in towns. More so in the Sun Belt than in this area, but I think we're on the cusp. If we have investment corporations buying all these properties and then they decide to do short-term rentals, we're going to lose our community. It's a well-documented aspect. Our zoning code only allows bed and breakfasts by conditional use. I think we should do the same with short-term rentals. Airbnb is really not that different than a regular bed and breakfast. It's just got the online platform. I also think that an Airbnb should have a Berlin business license in addition to their rental license. They are a business. They have income, they have expenses, they have to file tax returns. They need a business license just like I need a business license. The parking requirements must be enforced. Right now, just on my residential street, we have parking problems. And it's so frustrating. I've asked for things to be done and nothing gets done. I guess the question in my mind is, if you have a short-term rental and it's for a room in a house, I understand that we have to have one additional parking space for each bedroom. But what happens to the parking regulations if you have an entire house that gets rented?
bedrooms.
Okay, I mean, you could have a family come from many different places, and they could have, 4 or 5 cars.
If it's 4 bedrooms, they need 4 parking spaces.
Okay. I just didn't know if it was,
I mean, if the house accommodated 10 people to come, and they all drove their own vehicle, you gotta find another place to park them off the street.
Right.
I think it would be a rarity, but.
Okay. I also think that the violation penalties should be much larger. Like what was touched on before, when you're renting out an Airbnb, the violation fines are just a drop in the bucket. It's really pretty minimal. So I think we'll have a lot of violations if we don't have big fines. The last item I have is that I think this is really going to impact greatly on all the town departments. The police are going to have more traffic to deal with, speeding, and enforcing the short-term rental options. We're going to create more trash. When people are on vacation, they just create more trash. They use more water and sewer. And of course, electric. And of course, the town is going to have more paperwork. So that's more man hours for the town. And I'm concerned that this is going to cause you more budget problems. And then you're going to raise the taxes on the residents. Thank you.
You might just have to get on deck, JJ. I think so. Okay. Come on up, name and property address.
Yeah, I'm Jim Quick, 5 Bay Street, and I am the owner of the Holland House Bed and Breakfast here in Berlin. And the thing that I wanted to just point out, when we started our business 37 years ago, when we applied for our business license through the town, the first thing that they did was they contacted the county fire marshal. And the county fire marshal really had a lot of regulations that we had to follow. And being a business owner, my concern was when we started to see Airbnbs, pop up in the town several years ago, we were being inspected. We get inspected once a year annually by the county fire marshal, and we also, we have to have inspections through our fire protection service twice a year for all our handhelds, smoke detectors, etc. I asked the fire marshal then, and this has probably been maybe 8-10 years ago, how do they regulate the Airbnbs as far as inspecting them? And at that time, he told me that unless they have a business license, we have no idea that there are such businesses running in the town. And I said, okay, great. He said, but if they do apply for a business license, then the town would also pass that information off to the county, and then they'd be aware of it, and then they would do their inspections diligently, just like our business gets inspected through the county. And it's just trying to say that I think we need to level the playing field for everybody, especially if they're going to be a business. That's all I have to say.
And the only thing is, Mr. Quick, we wanted to make sure that there was, or did our best to try and make sure it was a level playing field. So you referenced the Worcester County Fire Marshal's office. There is a process for getting the property inspected, complying with the fire marshal's requirements in this as well. So thank you for that. Just name and property address again, please.
KJ Walsh, Terry Walsh Lane. Just a question, I mean, obviously here for kind of a two-way discussion, and obviously there's a couple of original versions of this ordinance that are floating around, and the inclusion and the removal of certain verbiage is obviously why most of us are here this evening. So is anybody on the board able to discuss why that particular verbiage was removed based on how it was originally proposed?
I think I can speak to that a little bit because what we're hearing this evening, right, are a lot of different things one way or the other. And I have that same problem because we do have to introduce a ordinance, right, to be able to discuss. We had a lot of workshops when I was a council member. We had a lot of workshops when I first became mayor, trying to gather a lot of that input. There have been places that have done well with short-term rentals. There have been places that were referenced this evening that haven't done well. So we're trying to do the best. We're not perfect. I did hear from a lot of people that we've heard from this evening, plus those that aren't in attendance, that are operating Airbnbs and it's not their primary residence. So I wanted to try and make sure that this ordinance captured the things that we really needed. And I've heard character referenced a lot this evening. I've heard protecting our neighborhoods. JJ, you know me. I'm a lifelong resident in Berlin. I have a son, a little guy. I want what's best for our community as well. But I did have the difficult task of trying to put something forward. And I did my research and tried to get buy-in. It's my best attempt. Is it perfect? Probably not.
Can I ask if this was a unanimous decision amongst the town council?
You can ask, but I can answer that as well by saying if you go back to look at the discussion we had, we were as divided as all of you. So that onus then fell to me to put something forward that I could sign hopefully at the end, because that's how it works. So it's not perfect. It's got room for improvement. I think a lot of you have made really great points this evening. But that's why you have 6 of us sitting up here. So I hope that answers your question.
Sure, appreciate it. It's good to see you back.
Good to see you later.
Thanks, guys.
Just name and property address, please.
Ron Cassio, 343 Walnut Hill Drive. I have a question for some of the people in the audience. Of those who stood up and spoke for, I have nothing against Airbnbs, for Airbnbs without the provision of a homeowner on board, identify yourself.
Would you restate that, please?
For those who spoke up for this bill, as it is, without the owner occupancy thing, okay, how many of you are residents? Of the town of Berlin? Okay. I think that the provision needs to go back in. Must go back in. It's what distinguishes us from all other places, okay? There are investors who are buying houses in town. They're investing their money. I applaud that. We, on the other hand, the residents, have invested our wealth, our families, and our votes in you. So it looks to me like it's real simple. With the provision in there about owner occupancy, you're representing your constituents. Take that out and vote for it, and you're representing people who don't live here for the most part. Who are you here to represent is my question, and we'll find out soon tonight, I hope. Thank you.
Anyone else in attendance that would like to address the mayor and council? Yes, just come forward.
Joe Hill, 304 North Main Street. I was just curious, you know, we've invested a lot of time in developing a comprehensive plan. Does this comply with our long-term view, or how does it fit? We have existing areas zoned for businesses, which could be a hotel, and we have, in the comprehensive plan, areas designated for residential, business, and what have you, spaces. So rather than following the trend that's popular right now, do we have a long-term vision for short-term rentals? We called it a hotel when I was growing up, or a motel. You've got the corridor of 376, is that right? Yeah. Right now, that's just prime for being another urban core. If we let the other things invest in individual housing and residential, it's going to jeopardize the quality of what you could do with that boulevard. So I'm just concerned we're following, like this get-rich-quick scheme at the jeopardy of long-term planning and developing what is more of a core tourist situation. When my family took vacations, we stayed in a roadside motel, had the pool, went there every year, worked good. Sorry you can't have a 3 or 4 or 5 bedroom house, but that's just the way we do. Sorry to hear that, Eric.
Good. Thank you. You can just come forward and state your name and property address.
Carol Jacobs, 307 and 305 Bay Street. Mr. Hill just said that it's an Airbnb or the short-term rental would be a business. I rent a property and I pay a business license to the town. So that's a business and that's permitted. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure what his intent is. Is he saying that because you have a rental property, whether it's year-round, that should be, zoning prohibits that? I'd like a clarification. Also, I'd like a clarification on the owner-occupied statement that was in, or the clause that was in the, I think one of the first original ordinances that was presented by the mayor and council. As I understood that owner-occupied provision, the owner had to reside on the premise to be able to rent a room or 2 rooms or rent out a space in their home. Is that correct?
I think your questions are probably best addressed by our planning director.
We had it in the previous version. It was under the definitions section. And the definition of a permanent residence means a dwelling unit located within the town of Berlin in which the owner resides for an aggregate of at least 180 days annually. And the dwelling unit carries the official designation as the owner's principal residence in accordance with the criteria governing the State of Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation Homestead Tax Credit Program. So with the assessor's office, you probably, for your principal dwelling, claim that homestead tax credit. So you're affirming that that's your primary residence, not your second home in Florida or your second home down the street. And you get that one-time tax credit. So what this was designed for, when we had that provision in there, was we heard the argument early on that somebody had a residence, but they were on a fixed income. So they wanted to take the back of the house, 2 bedrooms at their back of the house, and have that available for short-term rentals when they went to Florida every winter for 3 or 4 months, so they could have some income. Or if they separated the house, they could be living in the house here in Berlin when visitors came and tenants came for the short-term rental. So we didn't want to prohibit homeowners who are already here from being able to do it in the R1 or the R2, but we wanted to prevent the big investor or the people to come in and just buy up your house and my house and his house all in a row on the same street and then destroy the R1 or the R2. That's why that provision was in there the first time.
And that was my understanding as well. So I don't know if there's any confusion about that. I think someone stated that you could be on the premise. It could be that if you had a property on the same premise and you rented a secondary building, that was permitted, and that was not my understanding. So Mr. Engelhardt has clarified that for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in attendance this evening that would like to address the Mayor and Council? Going once? All right, we'll close the public hearing. Thank you all for providing input this evening. The next step turns to the council for either amendments, recommendations.
Actually, I have a quick question.
Yes.
Of course. So I freely admit I've never used an electronic platform. So is it possible, and I'm throwing this out, and somebody who knows more can answer. Is it possible that I can book a time frame and someone else use it? Is that
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so then my question, I guess, is there is no ID verification anywhere in this process? Okay.
That's not true.
Okay, we'll clarify for me.
There's also a difference between Airbnb owners who vet their tenants versus, say, like an instant book. So like if you use Airbnb, you can book through an instant book property, and there's less vetting that goes on with an instant book than when there is when someone has to approve it.
There's a variety of toggles that you can check off that say, do they need to provide you with the reason why you are staying? I say a lot of Airbnbs, or do you have to provide that? So that's up to the owner of the Airbnb. They can toggle that and require that as part of the rental.
You can put as many restrictions on your rental as you want. You can say there's only 6 adults, you can say only 2 cars. You can manage your property how you want to manage it. You can be a premier host, which means you have nothing but great reviews. I mean, I have a property that's a premier host property. So it's being kept up, it's being maintained better than owners around my house, other homeowners. You can restrict as much as you want.
Thanks, that's great.
The information that
Hold on. But hold on. So we need to, and Ms., can you just identify your name and your property address, please, for the record? Yes, please.
Nancy Duffelmeyer, and I live in Berlin and Ocean City, but not in the town of Berlin.
Thank you. Do you need property address? Thank you. And then if anybody else that wishes to speak, the best way to be able to do that is to come forward, name a property address for us to be able to do that. That's fine, but you have people watching at home, and you have folks here trying to get.
Can I just help to answer that question, because I did Airbnb for 20 years.
Name and property address.
Debbie Cook, 416 South Main Street. In most cases, and you can ask the people in this room, I did owner-occupied Airbnb. But in most cases, ask them if they have contact with each one of their guests. Physical contact. So that means I can rent an Airbnb property through an app, and I can let my 18-year-old son go stay there. Unless you're going to be on the property and meet those people one-on-one, and like I said, you can ask the people in here, do they meet every one of their people one-on-one? Then no, you do not have that control.
Thank you.
I think that's what you were asking.
Yes.
I have a question for the young lady that with the most rentals. During your presentation, you talked about the protection afforded you from participating with the Airbnb app. Could you describe those protections?
Airbnb has an insurance policy for their host. It protects them for damages to the house. I can't tell you every single thing on there, but I've had, if I've had an issue with somebody, I go to the resolution center. I had one case where someone said that they didn't actually do it. Airbnb, I let them bring a pet, and Airbnb didn't reimburse me for the damages because I let them bring a pet, so that was my mistake. But otherwise, Airbnb typically, if you submit receipts and you submit documentation, they try to come up with a reasonable accommodation and a reasonable reimbursement for any damages.
Thank you. Now, so I would know who I am talking to. Can you, by the show of hands, how many people in this group live in the town of Berlin? Thank you. By the show of hands, how many folks currently operate short-term rental? By the show of hands, how many of those folks operate their short-term rentals through the app as described by the young lady? I just have one more question for the group. How many folks in this group are currently in favor of the ordinance as presented?
Is this the owner occupies?
As presented. That is without the owner occupied. How many folks are in favor of the ordinance with the owner occupied stipulation? And how many folks are just not in favor of it? Thank you.
Over the course of the week since the packet came out, I received several emails and many calls from residents that couldn't be here tonight. And I will tell you that overwhelmingly, they wanted to protect the sanctity of our neighborhoods, and they wanted to see this owner-occupied provision put back in. They want to preserve Berlin as it is, and that said, I will make the motion to amend ordinance 2022-02 to put the owner-occupied provision back in under definitions and eligible zones. So I don't know, Dave, if you want me to read the two things out loud, but if not, Dave knows what they are.
I have the previous. Yeah, he's got it.
Yeah, go ahead and read it, please, if you don't mind, so we know exactly what's in there.
Trying to find it. Okay, so we had I just read the other definition of a permanent residence.
Right.
Permanent residence, which ended in the criteria governing the state of Maryland Department of Assessment and Taxation Homestead Tax Credit Program. And item C under that was the eligible zone. And it says short-term residential rentals are permitted in the incorporated limits of the town of Berlin, including R3, R4, B1, and B2, B3 residential zoning districts. And residential, number 2 was short-term residential rental units. I'm getting confused with the strikeout, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to read it?
You have it in front of you with the...
Yeah, so...
Not the strikeout, because it's...
Yeah, eligible zone, short-term rentals, residential rentals are permitted in the R1 and R2 single-family residential zoning districts only in a property owner's permanent residence as defined in paragraph B2, which was the previous thing you read.
Correct.
And subject to licensing requirements and regulations contained herein. So those two clauses go hand in hand.
So is there a motion on the table?
That is my motion.
For the clarity of the minutes, can you indicate exactly what section and subsection that will?
Sure. The first provision is under definitions.
Item B.
B2.
A2?
Yep. And the other provision is item C, eligible zone, number 1.
Thank you. We have an amendment on the table. I assume it's in the form of a motion.
Yes.
Second.
I have a second. All in favor of the, is this in favor of the amendment? And then we'll vote on the actual ordinance? Let's do it that way. So all in favor of the amendment to the definitions and eligible zones as previously stated? We have a motion by Councilmember Nur, a second by Councilmember Nichols. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect that 4 council members were in favor, Councilmember Purnell opposed to the amendment.
Before we proceed, I would just like to say that like Jay, I too have had several contacts concerning these issues. And the issue had concerned me for several reasons. First of all, someone brought up about government dictating what they do with their property. And I can understand that. I can really understand that. Other folks brought up concerning their business plan and how they earn a living and sustain their livelihood. And God knows I can understand that issue. But there's another issue. There is an issue related to quality of life. And here in the town of Berlin, I would hope that what I do with my property, how I sustain my livelihood, does not impact negatively on anyone's quality of life or have a negative impact on their neighborhood, because I would not want anyone to do that to me. And evidently we are preparing to vote. And rules are not made for the folks that comply. Rules are not made for those conscientious renters that check folks out, that never had an issue. Rules are made for those exceptions. Those exceptions to the rules that may impact negatively on my quality of life. And the vote we're gonna take now can impact the town of Berlin for decades to come. And I would ask my fellow council persons to please consider that when they cast their vote. Thank
you. Mayor actually had another amendment motion.
Okay.
In the original draft, the annual license fee was $200, and the revision, it was dropped to $125. I believe the county is at the $200 level. So I'd like to make a motion to amend the annual license fee to $200.
So we are talking about, just for the purpose of the minutes,
Sure.
we're talking about section D requirements, no.
Well, it can be, so section D2 under license.
We are actually in D.
also stated
It's
in
also
B2.
It's in B2 as well.
Can I ask the line?
Okay, thank you. So we're amending D2 and 4, where it says $125, and your motion is to change that to
The same thing that is at 200.
That requires a second.
Second.
I have a second by Councilmember Nichols. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect that the amendment changing the licensing, annual licensing fee from $125 to $200, and the renewal of a license from $125 to $200 passed unanimously.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if I could, Mr. Hammond brought up earlier about the violations. Other sections of our code say that a violation can be a repeat violation. If I write you a violation today and you don't comply within the 10 days I give you to rectify the situation, that violation becomes a daily violation. So if it's a $100 violation, every day it goes unmitigated, or you don't fix the problem, it can be a repeat violation. So I would say if we could change that under number 2, other violations, repeat or continuing violations result in the fine of $200 per day and may result in the revocation of, that would be my suggestion. And you of course, one of you would have to make that motion.
Thank you. We do need thank you for the input, but we do need a motion for the planning director's amendment request.
I'll make a motion, we amend the section other violations to read $200 per day.
And that is section E2. And that requires a second.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Nur to make the planning director's recommendation in section E2, other violations, and I have a second by Councilmember Nichols. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect that the amendment passes unanimously.
So I'll be prepared to make a motion for order.
It requires a motion and a second in order to bring it to a vote, yes.
So I make a motion that we approve ordinance 2022-02 as amended.
And I have one question. So a typical ordinance goes into effect how many days after?
20 days.
20 days. My only recommendation to this body would be to make it go into effect for the fiscal year, which would be July 1. But that's purely a recommendation, it's up to the motion. Just because you do have people that have to make changes.
Does that need to be an amendment to the text of the ordinance?
Not to the text.
It's an effective date for the ordinance.
So then I will revise my motion to approve ordinance 20-22- this year -02 as amended with an effective date of July 2022.
I have a motion by Councilmember Morris to approve ordinance 2022-02 with an effective date of July 1, 2022. I need a second.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you.
I'll second
I have a second by Councilmember Nur. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So I have 2 in favor.
You got three opposed.
And so I have Councilmember Orris and Nur in favor of the approval of this ordinance with the amendments with an effective date of July 1st, 2022. And I have Councilmember Burrell, Purnell, and Nichols opposed. The motion to approve is not passed. All right.
So the motion that I would pose is that the ordinance with the aforesaid date go into effect with the new normal 20 days.
So I have a motion to pass ordinance 2022-02 as amended following the standard effective date with all ordinances as described by the town attorney.
May I ask a follow-up question, Councilmember? Or actually, Dave, is that enough time?
No.
So you feel you need more time?
We have to create the application.
How
We
much
have to-
time, so I guess the
Well,
question.
July 1st would be appropriate, I feel, if you're asking my opinion.
I am, and that's, I think that.
Or by July 1st.
By July first?
Because you have to give people time to submit their applications. I have to create the application, we don't even have it yet. And then the signage and the postings for the units themselves, that all has to be done.
And
Okay, so
it
for the
has to be
record, I will
ordered.
send-
Until we pass the ordinance,
I'll
we
send-
can't move forward with those.
I will rescind the motion because we are not paperwork prepared. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful in any way, but I'm saying that because before that, I didn't know that we weren't prepared. But
Well,
we're
and
not- can't be.
we have to order
So I will
equipment
send
and stuff as well, so.
Okay, I'll rescind the motion to make it effective in 20 days.
So,
So then,
are you,
can you just change it?
Well, can I?
make another motion.
Okay. All right.
Let's just clean it up.
Okay, so I will go ahead and make a motion that we approve this year's -02 as amended with an effective date of July 1, 2022.
I have a motion by Councilmember Orris to approve ordinance 2022-02 with an effective date of July 1st, 2022, the amended ordinance. Thank you. I need a second. I have a second. Second by Councilmember Nur. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Let the record reflect that ordinance 2022-02 as amended with an effective date of July 1st, 2022 passes with Councilmember Nur, Councilmember Orris, and Councilmember Nichols in favor, Councilmember Burrell and Purnell opposed. Thank you all. Thank you for coming. Whether this came down on the side you agree with or not, it's very nice to hear from all of you. Is everybody staying for the tax rate hearing? All right, let's give it 5 minutes to allow for the changes.
For everyone standing in the back there, now, onto your seats.
Please don't
Well, my little, I know. Yes, yes. Tell me I said mine.
I'm working on
Yes, yes, yes.
This is OG.
Here, here. Oh, yeah.
I think it's cute when you were telling my next.
All right, everyone that's in attendance, we're still live, right? Everyone that's in attendance, if you're leaving, go ahead and step out into the hallway. If you're staying, we're going to continue with our agenda.
We'll see about that. I gotta put my gloves on, right?
Come on, bring it back.
No, I'm just telling you what's gonna happen. It's gonna be miserable for me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's no outcome good for me.
I'll still be nice to you, Dave.
We knew that to begin.
I didn't. But then when I looked at it,
You need to give any council members.
I would like to talk, gosh.
Yeah, and you gotta talk to somebody higher up. I mean, just being.
I'm good, thank you.
Come on. For those of you who do tobacco is not good, I'm not an advocate. No, I've done it. It's cool. He didn't even tobacco on the nose.
Just for everybody that's watching, once we get Councilmember Nur and Burrell back, we'll begin. You're running before you know it.
This is true. That's it.
Don't push it on the
I mean, it looks at,
Yeah.
Just,
Well, park in front of it.
Where's that pizza?
I ain't checking it was sitting up.
That's okay.
Got the thing's glass, okay?
All right, everyone, thank you for once or so. Thank you everyone for joining us for item number, what are we on?
3B.
3B, ordinance 2022-03 establishing an FY23 tax rate. You'll have Mayor Zacton and myself and the finance director running point on this. You will notice that there is a presentation in the packet. I do want to draw everyone's attention to the numbers here. If you go to page 2, the draft budget overview, if you look at this, this is misrepresented here actually. I went through and was trying to make some adjustments as we worked through the budget process, and what you see here is actually omitting our debt service and interest and principal payments, known as debt service on the budget. So that is not an accurate reflection, even with some of the amendments or adjustments that I've made related to some feedback I've received. We are still at a $35,000, $36,000 deficit. So those figures, the revenues are pretty on par, the expenditures, you can basically ignore that figure. I do want to go to the next slide, which does cover that revenue line item, which does show that with the additional income, by keeping the tax rate at 81.5 cents, which is what it is currently for FY22, the town is projecting to receive $143,948 in additional income. You'll see that some of the priorities, as we always look through the budget process, they've been identified in these slides. Our employees, of course, updated LEOP study. We've received a request to do some increased funding for EMS, which was done by the county previously. They've asked that we do the same thing this year. Highway user revenues are funds that we receive from the state, part of your gas tax, so that may or may not be impacted based off of the most current rollback. There's an in lieu of tax that's impacting our electric utility. It was $182,076 expense for our electric department. It was a revenue line item for the general fund. We are working to roll that back. We started that in FY22. It was phased out by 50%. This year's projected budget that we received from department heads did have the other remaining 50% factored into that. Some additional town projects included repairing brickwork to town halls, improving security, and investing in park equipment. I think it's important for us to identify the process for everybody that's following at home and in attendance of how our budget works. We've had general fund budget meetings. Typically that happens before we set the tax rate, which has to be done in the newspaper and published, so we can have a hearing like what we're supposed to do this evening. And that was done by meeting with, well, first we received the department head requests, and then this year what we did is we extended those invitations. Typically it's the mayor and the department heads and the town administrator and finance director. This year what we did was we had up to 2 council members that were able to attend. Minutes were produced and sent out to the council as well. We did that same process for the fire company. So all that information has been shared with the council. Moving forward after this evening, we do have a general fund work session scheduled for April 4th. That's with department heads from the general fund. Then we have a utility fund work session on the 11th, which is for capital, and the 18th, which will review the overall expenditure request for the utility funds, which are water resources, which encompasses sewer, stormwater, and water, and then our electric fund. We do need to establish a capital or a ARPA spending plan. I have asked for feedback and received some from the council. That needs to be done in conjunction with our budget this year. Budget introduction is May 9th. It's the job of the mayor to introduce the budget following all those meetings, and then the budget is adopted on May 23rd by the council. Just for a point of clarity for this evening, on following the meetings that we have with our department heads on March 4th, Friday, March 4th, 2022, I reached out to all of the council members and our department heads from administration, finance, police, economic development, planning, and public works, explaining that the department head request that I received had a $462,869 deficit associated with them. What that means is that the expenditures came in higher than what our projected revenues were. That's okay at this stage, but it does take some problem solving. I did ask everybody on this email, which included the council and those department heads that I just mentioned, to provide feedback about how we could make the budget work for FY23 under the proposed tax rate or the existing tax rate. I only received feedback from Councilmember Orris and Nichols regarding some ways that we can make that work within the existing tax structure. I did not receive anything back from our department heads, which I am rather disappointed about. I think that what we need to do is take a similar approach to what Worcester County took. They were facing an $11 million deficit, and what they said was the same thing that I had asked back on March 4th, to take a look at those budgets, figure out where we can make them work to come in within the existing tax structure, 81.5 cents, and then allow us to be able to have that conversation during a work session, which you can see on here as they're scheduled. And I think Councilmember Orris, you put it the best, and I have to admit, when you introduced the idea of putting the tax rate in at the same time as budget adoption or introduction, I didn't truly see the whole issue. But I think that you were onto something as it relates to when we need to make the determination about the tax rate. We're able to do it if done on May 9th with the perspective of seeing what takes place during our utility work sessions. We've had time to meet with the department heads. We've had time to see where they're able to trim. And then we can set a tax rate and a budget side by side, looking at what those revenues are, what the expenditures are, and where we need to actually come in.
And we will also have public input at that time.
Correct.
Before that.
So my recommendation this evening, I don't have a vote in the matter, is that I'm fairly certain we can do this, table the public hearing and come back to it at introduction of the budget on May 9th. It's purely a recommendation.
You can do that.
In the meantime.
Or you can have the public hearing and then table the legislation to a later date. Same thing.
And in the meantime, I think we ask our department heads to take a good solid look at their budget, figure out where we can come in at with respect to our revenue projections, and then figure out where we need to go from there through the work sessions. That's my thought. I'll entertain any comments before we open the public hearing, if that's the route we take.
Well, I do have just a general question that I was going to ask. Have we, as of close of business today, have we received any notifications from our revenue sources that we're still pending, and or information from healthcare costs?
Revenue sources, nothing. In healthcare, you and I had a conversation a couple hours ago. At that point, there was nothing, and during the meeting, I did receive for healthcare, but it's not anything that I choose to discuss today because the numbers are too raw.
Right, and we just got them at what, 8 o'clock? So.
And we wouldn't get a firm perspective of that until probably April 18th is what we're still looking at?
Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to Mr. Carroll tomorrow to see where we stand, but I'm sure nothing's gonna change from tonight to tomorrow morning.
Sure,
as far
and please,
as,
I mean, I'm not giving Mr. Carroll a hard time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's just,
It's hard.
It's very difficult to do
Technically,
this.
Care First says that they'll have numbers to you by April 1st. So we did get them a couple days ahead of time, but usually it is a little bit earlier in the game, so it's a little later than normal this time around. But.
And just historically, in
Mhm.
the process that we currently have, that doesn't help with the budget,
Yeah.
of setting of the rate.
Yeah.
No, it's very speculative for one of our largest expenditures.
Yes.
Zach, it's funny you said what you said, your recommendations. I was gonna recommend the exact same thing, that we postpone adopting the tax rate tonight.
And I think we take our best shot. I'm not saying that it's gonna be perfect. I'm not saying that it's gonna come in exactly where we need it to come in. But what we heard last fiscal year was let the departments here take a shot at it. And what I tried to do this year was allow for that. I've heard feedback as to why I didn't get that in return, but I wanna say that that's, I hope not true, but go back, sharpen the pencil, see where we come in at, and then we have 2 work sessions coming up. We have time to be able to discuss that from the 18th to the introduction of the 9th. and I think we'll end up with a better work product.
I have a statement if I could.
Yes.
I'm kind of confused because we're talking about March the 7th, and today's the 28th. You said that you're upset with us because we didn't go ahead and respond. However, we sat down with you and you said beforehand, cut it to the bone. And if we went ahead and cut it to the bone at the beginning, what is there to cut afterwards? Now, if you had any questions or concerns, there's 3 weeks in between to go ahead and say, hey, I didn't have to get anything back. We need to go ahead and really work with this, and this is the number. What we got was one statement, and that was it. And I'm kind of confused because if we went back and we ever had another meeting or if you there contacted us, we would be sitting with you. We would be sitting with the whole group. Again, this is inclusion, and that's what we asked for. We can't sit down and think, and honestly, we sat there and we said the numbers, and you were just like this, yes, yes, and there wasn't any questions. So if we feel it's not a question, we go back to our offices, sit down and say, he doesn't have any questions. We can get emails to go ahead and they're saying, hey, we need to take care of this, do this. We would love to have gotten an email, especially before you said you're disappointed at us. Again, we don't want to go ahead and blindside anybody, but we surely don't appreciate in the end someone saying, I'm disappointed at you. Again, I'm looking across here and these folks work hard every day. And for someone to go ahead and just make a statement like that, it's truly not appreciated. I don't think it's fair. Again, come, and again, I heard from other people that the contact was made with them, but not me. So for some reason, I feel excluded in this whole conversation. Next thing I heard is, well, trucks taken out of the budget, this taken out of the budget, but no one's talked to me whatsoever. And again, at the beginning, if we ever came in with that same statement that we're gonna work together, I would definitely sit down and we'd work on everything together. And again, that's my statement.
And Chief, I hear you. The comment, cut it to the bone, I don't recall that, but they were recorded, you can go back and take a look at that. But I think that...
I don't think they were recorded. I think they were ahead of their, the statement was when we ever said, we really have to work on this budget, and if you out there have anything that you want, don't put it in the budget. We want a budget with what you need. And again, I can't speak to any other departments. I wrote down what I needed.
And Chief, what I'm saying is that during those budget meetings, they're recorded, we have the minutes, I'm not even gonna begin to recall the whole conversation. But what I will say is I don't recall the statement, cut it to the bone, but we can check.
No, I did not say it was at the budget meeting.
Oh, okay.
So,
we did
again,
there.
Okay, I wanna understand.
Well, again, we've had discussion, and we were advised not to put wants in this budget. We were advised that. It's not a question about that. Said, I want needs only. And if you came back and said, hey, this is where we are, and whatever it might have been, we would have sat down and we're talking about 3 weeks ago. One email, and no follow-up email sent. And it was, again, supposedly another email that went out to everybody else, but I surely didn't get any more follow-up email.
No, so, just to clarify, I did send the email out to the entire group stating the deficit. I did send the email out saying I'd like your feedback on ways we can make this fit within the existing tax rate. With that being said, the phone calls you're referencing, I did make several phone calls before anything went out. But there were a lot of events that transpired last Friday via email from staff. And as I was making my phone calls, I had no idea that those had even transpired until I was filled in. And then I stopped. I stopped making those phone calls, and Chief, if I know I didn't make one to you, and I apologize for that, but I stopped, read what was sent in, and then I passed my thoughts along to the council. That is what it is. I do think that as a group, we need to come together on the budget. I think that it's important for the taxpayers. I think it's important for all of us to do that as an exercise together. My request to all of you is to work with the finance director, work with the town administrator. I'll play a part in that as well, but we all need to make this come as close to that tax rate as we possibly can.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
may I?
of course.
I have not received a phone call from you, nor I received a discussion about your presentation for tonight. The numbers that you're putting out there is solely prepared by you. I had no input, no suggestions, and no reviews performed in regards to this presentation. Also, I have been present for every single work session with department head, Jeff Fleetwood, you and 2 council members. And at the end of every single work sessions, the question was asked, what possibly could be eliminated or reduced or help to reduce your budget as you requested it today? And the answer from every single department head you have received, those are must-haves. There is no room to wiggle. The cost of material, chemicals, services, professional services, everything went up through the roof. We have sat down from January, one-on-one, preparing the budget. And when you state that we need to look and work harder, and you're disappointed that nobody comes through and suggested on more cuts, because there is no more cuts. There is no more suggestions. Every single department had called me assuring that what they have requested and discussed through the meetings, it's what they need to operate and provide services to the town. I'm sorry, but it's very disappointing. I concur with Arnold to hear that we disappoint you for not working hard on the budget.
And I hear what you're saying, and you are correct that I did ask that question at the end of each meeting. What I will say is that the disappointment is that there was no feedback. It wasn't, I didn't receive anything from any department that even said, I can't budge. I've taken another pass at my numbers. There's nothing that can be changed.
That is not what you were looking for, I'm sorry. You were looking for suggestion to cut the budget and not to verify that there is nothing to cut.
My request this evening and my recommendation to this body has been made. I think that we can come together on this thing. I think that it's going to take the work sessions. I think that an introduction of the tax rate and the budget at the same time on May 9th. Councilmember Orris, you proposed it earlier. I think that we should have taken you up on that. But I believe we should follow that.
So what do we do now?
Or we could continue with the agenda.
Well,
Or-
should we have, are we postponing this?
Dave, there is a motion in place, ordinance in place for reviewing the tax. If we go and pass that, we're basically not following in the range of the dates.
Is that an ordinance or a resolution?
Mary, help me out.
The tax rate is an ordinance.
Ordinance.
Well, I know the tax rate is an ordinance, and an ordinance can be put off.
But she's also dealing with dates to satisfy the state,
Advertisement and satisfying
in
the state.
addition to our code.
Well, what are those things?
It should be 21 days in between the advertisement, no more than 21 days. So if we're tabling right now, we will have to repeat the process later on. And also we have an internal control procedure in place when we adopted the policy to review the rates.
Well, policy can be changed.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be changed prior to that or after?
Should be prior to.
So then the policy need to be amended as well before we decided to push the adoption of the tax rate to the introduction of the budget. And I also have a question alongside. If we do decide to do that, on the introduction, preparing the projections for the revenue for general fund based on the tax rate, and then this tax rate will not pass, that will require to redo basically budget and potentially do more cuts on the budget and reintroduce the budget again. Is it correct?
They would be independent of one another, technically, but they would be tied together, of course, by the financial impact of one over the other. So what I'm saying is that the council could choose to pass a tax rate and not pass a budget. They could choose to do the other way around as well, but that wouldn't make as much sense.
But the suggestion to do it in the same day.
The suggestion would be to introduce them together, yes.
I think what Natalie is saying is, If she doesn't have a tax rate to work with for revenue, she can't produce a budget to be introduced at the same meeting.
But she does, so she would use the 81.5 and then produce the same way that we have it now, it has a deficit. So if there was nothing that we could move forward with, or roll back, or change, it would still have a deficit at the bottom. We can't technically pass a budget with a deficit, so something has to be done to correct that.
You have to change the rate.
Right.
You make it higher, and that's where I thought we were heading with all this. Nobody wants to hear higher taxes, but we've been kicking this can down the road. We've adopted reserve policies that we've not even, talked about, stick in them when we need to do it. We definitely need to have some discussion, because this was a big surprise. I thought we were heading down the path of 469 deficit and do the math and figure out the rate needs to be.
And to your point about the reserves, we have defined those. We have acted to fill many of those. They are at their targeted numbers. So
there's nothing
right.
in this next year.
Well, there is, yes.
We're hoping.
Well,
I can't see anything in this. I can see it in the other spreadsheet.
But if you look at the draft budget, like this is a presentation, it's not the draft budget. The draft budget does have a $300,000 contribution from slots to the reserves, because it's still accomplishing that payback from the police department. So it does have some things in there, but.
I don't think everybody ever agrees with that. So.
Well, I mean, that's why we need the work sessions too. I mean, it's very difficult to make all these things arrive at something to date without hearing.
Honestly, what made it the most difficult from what I see is leaving it at 81.5 cents and expecting it to work.
But isn't it your responsibility to present a budget that can be approved?
Correct.
And without these deficits.
Correct.
A
A balanced budget.
A balanced budget.
Which is required on May 9th. I mean, that's based off of our schedule. The charter, I think, says what, 30 days before the end of the fiscal year?
So I have heard from the department heads that the budgets they presented is bare bones, no wiggle room. So I would expect from you a legitimate tax rate where we can consider and approve.
I would have to introduce a tax rate and a budget that is balanced, to Councilmember Nur's point, on May 9th. That is the duty and obligation of the mayor.
Yes.
But what we have in front of us this evening is a tax rate without any dialogue, truly, other than a sit-down session with department heads to discuss what their requests were. That's it, that's all we got.
With a deficit?
With a $62,000 deficit, correct.
So with your recommended changes, it's $35,000.
But they're so, I didn't even call them changes, I call them theories, because they're so early in this process, right? Their recommendations, their dialogue points, like to the chief's point, his Tahoe was stated as a possible removal, but it said, there was a caveat there that said, want to have a conversation with the chief regarding this vehicle or possible alternatives.
But you see the problem in this scenario here, you recommended keeping the tax rate the same.
Yeah.
And yet, we can't solve this problem unless we raise the tax rate or
But
slash
it's-
and burn everything.
But it's too early.
Recommend to raise the tax rate.
But it's too early to even project what that would look like, truly. Because a moment ago, you just said you agreed, you were gonna
I don't
recommend
feel
it.
comfortable setting a tax rate without having all the information I need, and I don't think we have it. I think we need to go back to the department heads and talk to them, because I was in those meetings, and they clearly said, I have to have this stuff. It's not that I want it or we want to buy extra trucks, we have to do this stuff.
Correct, but there was, we discussed line items on the budget as requested to get more information about what was being requested. And then through these work sessions, if what we're saying, right, if those meetings were solely the formation of the budget, we wouldn't even have general fund work sessions or utility fund work sessions. We'd be going right here to May 9th and introducing a budget. That's not how it's done. We need to have time to meet. We need to come together on this. Are we gonna agree? Maybe not.
We have general fund budget work session, I'm sorry I'm interrupting, on April the 4th.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
So all the items in details will be discussed again.
But the true impact, I think I understand what you're saying, is that we could adopt it or propose a tax rate and determine that before May 9th. Is that what you're saying?
It's tonight.
Correct. And what I'm saying is that you can do those things, but you're not doing it with all the information that you need, as you just stated that you would
Mr.
like to
Mayor,
have.
which information are we missing? You keep saying what information you need. What exactly are we missing?
The entire council has not had a chance to go through each item, like what we're gonna do on a work session, with any of our department heads. We've had a preliminary sit-down following the requests of department heads in the general fund. That's all we've had so far.
So I'm sorry, I'm gonna question then why we presenting the cuts and potential balance in the budget today.
I said just a moment ago that my math was incorrect on expenditures, and you should basically, and I'll say it again, ignore the expenditure column. The things that we put in here as possible highlights, you will see those again. We will be discussing those during a work session.
But these numbers have been presented there to the public.
What's, okay, and the point?
I'd rather talk to you offline about that, Mayor.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that the only error within this presentation is the expenditure column. And I'm saying that I made an error calculating the debt service expenditure.
Why weren't these numbers presented to the finance director?
Most of these numbers in this presentation are derived from staff. The only number that is not is the total expenditure amount, which I just said that I omitted a vital component. You should always pay your debt service. My PSA.
I'm just afraid we're gonna go to the budget work session without the tax rate in place, or we have the tax rate as a current rate. And we're gonna go to April the 4th, general fund work session. And every department head from general fund will come in front of you again, just like we've done it already, and discuss their budget line by line, stating that what they have requested and what you have in place. The report that's been emailed to everybody on February 16th will be unchanged.
But it won't be, because what we're gonna ask is that when you're coming before us on the work session on April 4th, you're gonna go in it with the perspective of the existing tax rate and come here and say, this is what could fit, these are the components that we vitally need and if we can't fund those, these are the priorities in which I think they should be rolled back.
But that's what discussed on the capital work session in February. Those are the priorities. The capital was discussed.
They were discussed as we need these items. We need a lot of items. Our town is filled with failing infrastructure and old equipment. We've got a lot of those. We can't tackle them all in one fiscal year. We need to be understanding of what we can reasonably accomplish in a fiscal year and how we're gonna get there. And that's what I'm saying that the design of these work sessions is for us to have that conversation together, for us to all have access to the information, and then be able to produce something that we can reasonably and in an educated fashion discuss. Right now, we're talking a bunch of hypotheticals.
At the same time, we passed a 5-year capital plan that said you gotta have this year, and now this thing is.
We have never passed a capital plan. We have discussed, we never had a capital plan before. We discussed the framework of building one out. It's a discussion, it's a dream right this moment. My goal is for us to adopt a 5-year capital plan. But that has to be done with consideration of revenues. And how, to Councilmember Purnell's point, we don't agree on taxes at all. We agree on some things, but not taxes. And to the point, the thing is that a 5-year capital plan, are we all gonna agree on how we're gonna accomplish it? Maybe not, but we can have a more reasonable discussion about what needs to be accomplished and how we're gonna get there. It's a draft rate.
Tell me this. You talk about a reasonable discussion.
Correct.
At the end of that discussion, at the felt by the group, that it would be reasonable to suggest a tax increase, would you suggest that?
That depends. I'm not, and where Councilmember
Or,
Purnell.
or, would you prefer jeopardizing services, jeopardizing safety to keep the tax rate consistent?
And let me answer your question. So I think I understand your question as, would I raise taxes if it was shown that we had to do so?
No, my question was, would you recommend?
Well, and to your point, I think that there's a
You don't have that authority.
What's that?
Because you don't have the authority to raise taxes.
I don't, well, no, I do not.
What do you recommend?
But Dean's right, to a point, I don't have the ability to do that. So, but to answer your question, I vehemently disagree with tax and fee increases, right? However, hold on, let me answer your question. However, I'm not gonna jeopardize the safety of our staff. I'm not gonna jeopardize the core things that our local government should be accomplishing. And I will do everything that I can possibly do to make it so those fees and taxes do not have to go up. But if there was no other way and we had to share that cost, that's why we have taxes, that's why we have fees, you can bet that I would recommend those. And to that example, I recommended to this body that we pursue fee increases for our enterprise fund, for the ones that truly need it, because we can't even cover a $15,000 infrastructure improvement. Because, no, I'm answering your point, because I disagree with having to do that, but it is an obligation that we have. Okay.
You know, and I hope I'm not getting off, but words have meaning, and words mean something. I came across these words that I would like to share with the group. And this is what I'm asking of you, Mr. Mayor. A leader. A leader is someone who inspires passion and motivation in followers. A leader is someone who ensures their team has support and the tools to achieve their goals. And Mayor, right now, I'm asking for your leadership.
And my response to that is that I want to give you the things that you just asked for. But in order to do so, I do not feel we are fully prepared to make the decision before us this evening with the information that we have at this present moment. Councilmember Wurz has mentioned the healthcare being up in the air. We've got requests that exceed our revenue projections to the tune of almost $500,000. And I'm saying to you, in order to meet that request, I believe that we need to push the tax rate hearing to the introduction of the budget, or very close to that, after we've had a chance to assess the work sessions with our staff and ask them to take a look at their budgets and bring them as close to in line with the tax rate as they can for FY22.
Mayor, I think it's very unrealistic in the general fund to cut $462,000.
I disagree. And I think that there is, the only way we're gonna truly find the answer to that is hard work. And right now, we've got to put some hard work in to the budget. We've got to take a good, careful look at the requests that are before us and figure out what we can do to meet that, bridge that gap.
Can the public speak?
Yes?
Aren't your department heads here saying that there's not going to be any changes at the current rate? All of them are here, right? And they're all saying that it's not going to change based on what they've already gone twice to do. And aren't you already aware, from many years of knowledge of this town, that kicking the tax can down the road is going to bite us in the butt, and we cannot do it on the backs of our employees?
And to answer your question the best.
I'm not looking for an answer. I'm not looking for an answer. I've spoken to the experts. I've spoken to the people who look at the numbers. That Natalie wasn't involved in this is appalling. And I just can't understand what I'm hearing in this room and listening to these people sigh and moan. I just don't understand it, Zach. And I'm a full supporter of you, man, but I don't get this.
And you and I have talked about the fact that we won't always agree.
You're right.
And to your point, if what you were saying was in fact true, right? Just for a moment, let's say that it is. Why would we have utility fund work sessions, right? They're designed to have, otherwise we would just adopt what was already given to us. That's not how it's supposed to work. We are supposed to have a conversation about these things. We're supposed to do our due diligence at evaluating those expenditures. And what I'm telling you as a resident and somebody that I believe I report to is we have not done enough. And
I feel like they have.
But that's okay. You can feel that way.
Sure. You're right, I can feel that way. But I hear the sighs and moans of our employees, and it doesn't smell the same as the words that are coming out of your mouth. And that is the problem. That's the disconnect in this room. Do you not see their faces too?
I see their faces.
I can
all
read
the
humans
time.
really well, man, and this tells me a lot. That's all I have to say, man.
Now, we have a question for you. Based on the request from the department heads and all the numbers in the draft budget, what tax rate would we need to make it work? Realistic?
I would recommend to go by 3.5, 3 cents and a half to be as close as possible to close the gap. And then hopefully tomorrow morning, I'm gonna get into the revenue projections again and we receive the better insurance estimated cost. So, but at this point, I'm sorry, at this point, 81.5, no matter what we do, is not gonna close the budget. Unless we're gonna do tremendous cuts to the general fund. We're not talking about enterprise funds. We're not discussing utilities up here. It's just general fund, the governmental unit, the general fund only.
But to answer the question as well, you said 3 cents? Is that what you said?
Three and a half.
That only produces an additional $200,000 in revenue. You're looking at a half, roughly, give or take. And I'm going off of recollection of our tax sheet, so I'm probably going to correct a little bit on that too. That doesn't close a $500,000 gap.
My understanding is it was $100,000 for every penny, close to it.
It would help tremendously to achieve the
What
closure.
is the penny doing?
I think you need 9 cents. In order to close $462,000 in, and this is off my recollection, you can do the math, but I think you need 9 cents.
My understanding is one penny gets us close to 100,000.
Yes, that's correct.
If one penny gets you close to 100 grand.
Yeah.
3.5 gets you 350 grand.
The tax sheet that we had went to 84 or 85.
Counselor, could you please
And I think that
help
that
me
went
with that?
to, I want to say it only produced $200,000 in revenue, and that was going up like 3 cents. You might be right.
The tax rate.
It's the tax rate projections.
I think we're getting ready to see it. No, that's not the correct one.
But that's
So,
important.
this one, there you go. Revenue.
We'll come back to it.
312.
And that's for 4 cents?
So if we go into,
285, gets you 285
we're
cents.
gonna get 312 additional in revenues.
That's 3.5 cents. And you get,
312.
Yeah, so who's gonna get it then?
and we need another 100 and some change?
But you get 145 coming from just by the assessments going up.
No, but that's factoring it in.
That's right.
So this is already in that assessment.
But you got health insurance at,
Possible changes.
that's right.
Possible changes.
That's my point. We don't have enough information this evening to even really base that conversation. I think you're closer to 9 cents.
No, I don't think.
No, Mr. Mayor, we
no,
don't
no.
need 9 cents, I'm
All due
sorry,
respect,
we don't.
it's not-
With all respect, there is no discussion about 9 cents increase.
We'll take 9 cents.
No, you don't. I won't sign it.
So the 3.5, the last line that you see out there, it's 85. If we are even at that rate, Kelsey, could you please pull out the graph? This is just informational purposes. At 90, that's where we are in comparison with the others.
And the other thing that I'm gonna share with the collective body, if you don't mind, Mayor, the one thing I wanna share, irregardless of what you look at on this, if you look at the tax rates for the municipalities, not the counties, realize something here. I had a phone call Friday from, the town manager of Princess Anne. And I was asked the question, what are you guys doing with your tax rate? And I said, it was introduced at 81.5. And he said, well, we're talking. I said, you're $1.03. And I said, your residents pay for trash as well. So, I mean,
It's assessable base is what it's going.
Maryland, it's relative. It may be assessable base, but it's relative.
So we have two options, I think,
Thank
maybe
you.
a couple more. We can either progress through the agenda as before us, move forward with the property tax hearing that we're supposed to have this evening, or we could do the recommendation of introducing the tax rate, or re-advertise, of course, but reintroduce the tax rate at the time of budget introduction, which would be May 9th, which would allow the group to be able to have a better understanding of what our revenues look like and have time to meet with general fund department heads and utility fund department heads.
I wish that if this was where we were headed, that we would have discussed it before tonight. I mean, I'm not saying that Jack's idea, Councilmember Orse's idea is a bad idea, because I think it's a great idea, but I don't think it should have been in the 11.5 hour. That's my only take on that right there. I think that if that's what we were going to do today, or if that's where we were gonna be today, then we should have known that before 9, 10 o'clock Monday night, the night of the week.
As Dean said,
It's 10 o'clock.
Just to bring to the attention, if we're going to introduce the rate on May 9th, that puts us on May 23rd to adopt the tax rate. If we don't have a full presidency vote as a body on May 23rd, I will not make it to the roll for the Worcester County.
I believe it also won't meet the town code for when the adoption has to, when the budget has to be adopted. I believe it has to be adopted before, 30 days before the fiscal year, which meets the last meeting of May.
It's becoming a big snowball if we're pushing it that far.
That's correct.
So then what can we do with the date that's budget introduction to adjust that for enough time following the utility rate sessions that we can
You
have?
will have to adopt the budget April 11th.
We can't.
I'm sorry, tax rate, not the budget. Sorry.
But
Tax
how
rate.
does that change the budget? We just said that the discussion was that if the budget's not
You
adopted
will have
30 days
April 4th is a general budget work session that's apparently what you're looking for, to look at the budget one more time. Am I understanding correctly?
I don't think it gives you the full picture of what we're looking at. It does give you a picture of the tax rate and the general fund, but it doesn't show how the two funds work, or the decisions carried forward across different funds.
I'm
So-
sorry, which funds are we talking about?
So, I think what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we could adopt a tax rate following the general fund work session.
On the 11th, yes.
Correct. But that still does not put any perspective to the actions that may or may not go into the general fund budget and how those may impact a utility fund budget.
Can I
They have no
interrupt for a
impact
second?
on the
Yes.
utility funds.
Our charter says that the mayor on such date as the council by ordinance shall determine, but at least 32 days before the beginning of any fiscal year shall submit a budget to the council.
It doesn't say it has to be passed, it says it has to be submitted.
32 days before.
Correct, which May 9th gives us ample time to be able to do.
Is there something that states the date that it has to be approved or adopted? Is there
Oh, it's gotta be adopted before
that.
July
Right,
1st.
right, so how much, I mean, is there an exact, like, is there a
No.
May 31st?
From a practicality standpoint, there is also a considerable amount of work that staff then has to do to implement that budget prior to the start of the fiscal
I
year.
guess that's the question that I'm asking. Feasibly, what kind of time frame puts us, and I know that this is subjective, but if we were to go back to what Dave just read and we stayed within that, what was that, May 9th date or whatever? And we have to be ready by, or they have to be adopted by July 1st, how much time, in all actuality, realistically, needs to happen to make this?
There was enough time last fiscal year, if my memory serves me correctly, for us to disagree on a budget around that same time frame, and for us to amend it and to pass it before the fiscal year and still have a little bit of time to spare.
I mean,
So-
we were all like holding our breath at the very last minute almost, weren't we?
And if I may, there was enough time, but it did put considerable strain on our staff resources.
I agree wholeheartedly, and the objective is to not jump through those hoops year after year. But what I'm saying is that as an example, we had time to disagree, move forward from that, and pass the budget that we're in today. So,
I'm gonna make a motion that we table this discussion, adopting the tax budget until, the tax rate until,
all in favor of moving the tax rate introduction to mirror and come on the same date as the budget introduction, which is May 9th.
That wasn't his motion.
It is the same
You
date.
said May 9th.
He said May 9th.
But
we're tabling the adoption of the tax rate until May.
And we will advertise and make sure it's introduced and done to meet that same deadline as the budget on May 9th. Am I missing something?
The public hearing
His
does have to
motion
be held
did
within
not
60
include-
days of introduction.
It's, if you don't adopt the tax rate on May 9th,
I understand it.
we're not gonna make it to the tax roll because there's potentially, it's gonna be amended or vetoed or changed. So I'm just warning you, if we're not gonna submit the tax rate to the county, we got email yesterday as a warning from them already. They're not gonna include us on the tax roll.
And what
Simple
is
as
the
that.
absolute last date that you need that for?
June 27th.
Yeah, I think we can make that. Even if we have to call something in an interim, we will make that date.
I'm sorry, but just please explain what is the resistance to go for tax adoption on April 11 after we discuss the budget here in the public settings?
I think we've discussed that point, and unless I've missed
You
something,
have
I
mentioned,
believe.
I'm sorry, you've mentioned that it will not correspond or flow to the utilities, but utilities has nothing to do with it.
But that's not entirely true, because there is impact of decisions made in the general fund that historically carry over to impacts within the utility funds. And those things, whatever we need to make a decision on, needs to be holistic. And we're not gonna, and we'll use employees as an example. If we adopt one rate in the general fund and we determine that it's not equitable or achievable in the enterprise funds, that's not gonna fly. So we need to have a.
I understand this, but normally in the budget work session for the general fund, we've discussed every single line, we've decided on every single line. So once we go from the budget work session to introduction, those are pretty much the same reports.
They are, until we start to look at and take a view of what we can actually afford or is achievable under the utility funds. So it requires us to have both of these work sessions before we can accurately say this is the path forward for the town of Berlin for FY '23.
I don't agree. I think we could probably do something by the end of that meeting. You've already heard from all these guys once. We're gonna hear from all again. And when we get done that night, it's not gonna be a hard decision based on what we think we need to keep or cut or.
April 11th, you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
fine.
fine with that, changing my motion to April 11th, but I just.
I'm fine with that. Tee it up and let's get it over with.
And you won't have
You won't have
your
utilities.
healthcare stuff
Healthcare
until the
we'll have.
18th.
We will have health.
We want healthcare by the end of the week, Mayor.
Why has everything from Chris said this utility fund on?
Mayor, I can read you the email I got from Chris. I told you at 8 o'clock tonight. We'll have a number by the end of the week.
Change your motion.
That was recorded.
second.
So hold on, we have a motion by Councilmember Nur to move the tax rate hearing, a hearing for adoption on to April 11th.
Second.
And I have a second by Councilmember Burrell. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect that the tax rate hearing will now be on April 11th at 7 o'clock or during the meeting, regular session.
Jeff or Natalie, generally speaking, for the state revenues that we usually enjoy, when do we get notification of those historically for revenues?
They're just coming normally April, I would get, yes, I just don't have anything.
I'm not an exact date, just, okay, thank you.
All right, let's see.
Yes.
What's that? I know, I hope we can get it done quickly too. Let's see, we have a proclamation for fair housing, which is agenda item number 4. And this is proclamation 2022-02, a proclamation of the Mayor and Council of the Town of Berlin recognizing April 22, 2022 as Fair Housing Month. Whereas the Congress of the United States passed the Civil Rights Act in 1968, in which it was declared that the law of the land would guarantee the rights of equal housing opportunity. And whereas the month of April is recognized by the federal government as Fair Housing Month, and realtors, developers, financial institutions, landlords, tenants, and the public at large are recommended that it is illegal, or reminded, wow, you can tell it's getting late, that it is illegal to discriminate in housing on the basis of age, race, religion, sex, or national origin. And whereas fair housing groups and the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development have over the years received complaints of alleged illegal housing discrimination, and whereas the state of Maryland, through the Department of Housing and Community Development, supports fairness in housing through a variety of programs and working partnerships with the federal government, local governments, and private sector businesses to ensure better living conditions for all Marylanders. And whereas equal housing opportunity is a condition of life in our community that can and should be achieved. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Mayor and Council of the Town of Berlin, hereby declare the month of April 2022 as Fair Housing Month in the Town of Berlin. Witness this hand and seal the date, today's date, but it says of April 2022. And I will let our Deputy Town Administrator, Mary Boland, describe some of the work that we're doing as it relates to fair housing and where you can find that.
The Fair Housing Declaration is a national effort. It's been, as it said, since 1968. It is a requirement of the town if we want to pursue certain grant funds to have this recognition in place. Basically, the proclamation is fairly self-explanatory. It's a boilerplate that the Department of Housing and Community Development provides us, and is a housekeeping on an annual basis.
Thank you. Thank you for working to prepare that. Up next is discussion, agenda item number 5, which are 2 discussion items. We have Heron Park RFP update. I'll point on that. The council met with each party in executive session regarding Heron Park and their submissions, just to ask some follow-up questions regarding those. We will hopefully have some more to report on that as in subsequent meetings. Agenda item number 5B is the use of parcel 0842 on Flower Street. For those of you, just to refresh everybody's memory, that is the parcel that was owned by the Booker T. Washington Lodge that the town now owns. With that being said, that parcel has played an integral part in the activities for Memorial Day. We have received a request from the Berlin Community Improvement Association, the folks that run the Memorial Day Parade, requesting to be able to continue to use that parcel of property as they have in years past. So there will not be, and Jeff, refresh my memory if I missed something, but there will not be any alcohol. I believe it'll be used to hold, or place vendors or parking, however the layout used to be. So it does require some action by the group. We can do that as a formal agenda item or do it.
Move to approve.
But motion by Councilmember Burrell, second by Councilmember Nichols to approve the use of parcel 0842 on Flower Street for Memorial Day's activities. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let the record reflect that the use of parcel 0842 on Flower Street passes unanimously. Thank you.
Was that used by the BCA?
By the BCIA in conjunction with the Memorial Day activities. And that's it. And it's not for alcohol use or any of those things.
People are usually parked there, people sitting, watching the parade, some vendors that overflow from the property that the BCI owns actually.
And if there's any need, we are meeting with the DCIA, if there's any need for us to change our insurance structure or require anything for that day of the event, that conversation is taking place between the town administrator and the DCIA. So we'll update you if there's any change to those things. Agenda item number 6 is the town administrator's report.
The mayor mentioned the meeting that we had with the two bidders regarding Herringbrook property. We met with the mayor and the DCIA during the Memorial Day parade. The smart meter procurement RFP, we received 3 bids of being evaluated by Jamie and Josh at the DBF. Public Works, Water and Electric, we met with, as a group of a vendor. Currently, as you're well aware, the electric utility and Public Works are wearing uniforms. Jamie's on board with doing the same thing with the water resources folks. So the contract that we have now with Public Works, it works out to, what did we say the other day, a week?
It's about
It's about $100 a week for 8 employees, so it's pretty daggone cheap. So we got the same price for water resources. Jim and I toured his capital needs more than once, and I sent out to each of you a snapshot of stuff with a summary of the things that Public Works is in need of. Eric Fiore with Forgotten 50. We had a discussion back and forth. Long story short, he needs to purchase an additional EDU for the new distillery. And then Tony Wiggs gone. I don't get a chance to applaud him, but We Heart Berlin did raise or received a $10,000 grant, and Tony wants the town to have that lighting project for Henry Park basketball courts. And then last thing that I have, again, Jamie is out. I'll be back Wednesday, or scheduled back Wednesday of this week. But I wanted to share with everyone that Marvin Smith is retiring the end of April of 2022. Jamie and the Water Resources Department is having we call it a farewell, but a little food and beverage, non-alcoholic, on the 28th of April at around noon. Everyone is invited. I'll reaffirm that date tomorrow, but my recollection tells me it's the 28th.
I think it's the 27th.
Yeah, I had the 22nd with the 28th as a backup date.
And I stand corrected, it is the 22nd, but I'll definitely follow up with an email on that. And that's my report.
Thank you. Up next are departmental reports, and we'll take them from this side to Economic and Community Development Director Ivy Wells.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
We received the $5,000 Keep Maryland Beautiful grant to fund the bioretention rain gardens for Pollinator Way, which is the alley located between Island Creamery and Gilbert's Provisions, and to continue our free reusable bag giveaway. We had received the Main Street Improvement Grant for $10,000 to fund downtown beautification, the Memorial Garden on Main Street, holiday decor, and attendance to the National Main Street Conference. Submitted grants for the pedestrian bike trail connecting Heron Park and the downtown, and to add additional benches downtown. Attended the Memorial Day Parade Planning Meeting, Berlin Chamber of Commerce meeting, Beach to Bay Heritage Area Board meeting, Worcester County Tourism meeting, working on potential new business for the vacancy on William Street. When I submitted this, working on it, it has now come to fruition, and Mandala Pies, who started at the Berlin Farmers Market, is now going to have, it's the second farmers market vendor that's opening a business here in downtown Berlin, and that's what it's all about.
It's called what?
Mandala Pies.
Oh.
Pie. She's the pie lady from the farmers market. I didn't want to list all the events that I'm currently working on, so working on a variety of upcoming events, and finalizing the plans to finish the Welcome Center asphalt mural and begin the Pollinator Way sidewalk. I'm tired, sorry. Sidewalk mural. That concludes my report.
I don't know why we're all tired, but Thank you. Any questions for our Economic and Community Development Director, Ivy Wells? All right, up next is our Planning Director, Dave Inglar.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll try to make it quick. We issued a certificate of occupancy for the new auto zone, and I know that the Department of Assessment has added it onto the rolls already, so we'll get some revenue out of that starting July 1. We issued, this past week, 6 building permits, which included 2 for fencing, 2 swimming pools, and 2 for residential remodeling. We also received building applications for 34 townhouse units on Sunlight Lane, and for a new showroom building at IG Burton Chevrolet. We've been waiting on that one for a while, but now we have the plans in processing. They should be issued shortly. And finally, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Berlin Board of Zoning Appeals will meet Wednesday, April 6th at 5:30 p.m. in this room to hear an appeal for a variance for reduced setbacks at 21 Jefferson Street to facilitate the new construction, a new building to be constructed on the Berlin Common parcel that's there and on the triangle of Gay and Jefferson. So they want to construct a building there for the Buzz Meadery. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for our Planning Director, Dave Inglar?
Where's Sunlight Lane?
Over here,
Pearl
on
Song.
346.
Out on 346. Purnell Crossing?
Okay, back to
Sorry.
No, spell it right.
Oh, my pony's name. That's why it's named Sunlight.
Any other questions for our Planning Director? All right. Up next is our Electric Utility Director, Tim Lawrence.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to my crew that was here tonight. They were here for a reason, to show unity for the employees, because they understand that the budget process is very important. It affects our livelihood, our pay, so that's why they were here tonight. Okay, as far as the work schedule for the past 2 weeks, North Main Street, we installed a new commercial service, Sunset Lakes, which is out there off Henry Road. We replaced 2 transformers there at the power plant. I don't know if you have that, Kelsey. Do you have the
I'm sorry.
the pictures you see up there were a field trip by Berlin Intermediate School, 6th graders. They actually did a project concerning electricity. They wanted to tour the power plant, which I took them through the plant and explained to them how all the engines run and that type of thing, and you know how the power goes out to the substation and the grid. And then after that, their job was to walk downtown and find a electrical, you know, whether it's an overhead line, underground transformer, and then figure out a scenario if the power was to go out, how they would basically restore the power. That was their project. I actually received a really nice thank you note from all the students. It's hard to read it. But I received that later on after the field trip, a few days later, and I just enjoyed, you know, explaining that to the children.
One was pretty funny. I hope you get the funding for your new generator.
That was
It's in the
good.
bottom right corner.
But,
Which person said, oh, Stefan said it.
Yeah, it made me laugh.
yeah, I really, they asked a lot. You know,
Yeah.
for 6th graders, they asked some really, really good questions concerning electricity and how it's generated and that type of thing.
They practice on me every day. Every day is some question that's completely off the wall.
Yep.
So they were prepared for you when they got there.
They were, and I enjoyed it. And then after that, Buckingham Road, we repaired underground secondary fault at the power plant. We removed, there's these 2 devices called reclosures at the power plant substation. We had to send them off to be refurbished. Gold Creek, we're going to be doing a scheduled outage there. We're actually replacing the transclosure with a pad mount transformer. That's a long process because they have to notify the state. I guess because of the people that live there and their needs. So I'm working with the manager of Gold Creek to facilitate that. Then also Germantown Road and Route 113, we helped SHA on a streetlight issue out there. And then metering, we had to do disconnects and reconnects. Bethel Road, we repaired underground secondary fault. And then today through Wednesday, we'll be out reading meters. It's the end of the month. That's my report.
Thank you. I do want to comment just briefly on the work that you did on Buckingham Road.
Yep.
It was on a Sunday. You spent a lot of time out there. I saw you driving around in some instances by yourself.
Yep.
So thank you for that. It goes a long way.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any questions for our Electric Utility Director, Tim Lawrence?
Yeah, Tim, real quick, just a quick follow-up from last meeting. Were you able to get those transformers ordered?
Yes.
Okay.
They have been ordered. Thank you.
That was all.
Thank you. Up next is our chief.
Wait, I wanted to say something. I know you're all gone and I wanted to take them out the hall, but I thought it would be rude to do so. But could you please let the guys know that them sitting in here tonight after having worked a full flipping work day,
Yep.
was sitting through that entire open session with the other ordinance or what have you, we truly appreciate it. Could you please let them know that?
They finally got to see what I go through every other.
I actually texted Tim and said, you better buy them lunch.
I didn't know they were going to be here this long.
Up next is our Chief of Police, Arnold Down.
Good evening again, everyone. On March the 15th, I had opportunity to go to Annapolis and help select the top cop. Again, a municipal police officer in the state of Maryland. And we finalized our training conference for April the 18th to 21st with Municipal League Police Executive Association. Our keynote speaker will be the governor himself, and he's has cut a piece of the time so we can actually one-on-one actually talk to him about the things that we're going through as a law enforcement community, and he is we're very blessed to have him, bring him and his staff to go ahead and listen to us. The conference itself has an agenda which is going to be focusing on mental wellness with the alarming rate of suicides among police officers, and trying to develop a culture that's healthy in the sense of reporting problems or issues without feeling stigmatized. That was one of the focal. And the other thing is liability within police work. Again, as a town, we're going to look at those things as law enforcement executives and the agencies themselves. Had an opportunity to also have a meeting with the Training Commission, the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission, to go ahead and help write some of those new policies and standards for police reform. We've been doing this since February, and the time is getting really close to July 1. And again, it's some heavy lifting to take care of. Within the agency, myself and Lieutenant Fisher, we actually reviewed and went over 10 new policies with Lexapol, and that process is moving forward and smoothly. On March the 22nd, had an opportunity to meet with members of the Vulnerable Population Task Force, Ms. Jones from Worcester Youth Family Counseling Services, Mr. Houston from Tri-County Community Mediation, and Ms. Wampler from Aetna Better Health. They set up a program for last Saturday at Henry Park, and we want to go ahead and thank Councilperson Nichols for being there and making some phone calls and making sure some folks got out there. They did this last minute. Murray, had to go ahead and do quite a bit of communicating with them. We definitely reinforce with them that they need to give due notice whenever trying to do a program like this, and have an opportunity to go ahead and meet with Jimmy Charles and everybody who's going to be involved with the type of program in the future. So they definitely listen to that. Lieutenant Lawson up there attended the Handle with Care training session at the Board of Education, and that process is a reporting mechanism to the schools whenever we as police officers have contact with children that they might be traumatized, through the last evening. And we want to go ahead and report to them so they can keep an eye on the child throughout that day. If needed, the counselors will actually go and talk to them. The last thing I want to go ahead and report is just we had 1 accident and 3 arrests in that time period. And we also make an update on the actual overdoses. Last year, we actually had 11 overdoses with 2 deaths. And we've been averaging roughly 1 a month. And currently this year, we've had 3 to the date, so it is actually 1 a month. That is my report.
I appreciate that info. Thank you, Chief.
You're quite welcome.
Any questions for our Chief of Police?
I have a statement in this, and I'm gonna, thank you, it's our testing season, we're just about to start state testing, like hardcore in public school. Your headphones, the earbuds, thank you guys, because, I mean, I know the children are supposed to supply them, families are supposed to, but because you and Fisher and the crew came through, a good portion of our children will be able to test without disturbing others around them, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Town Attorney Gaskell?
Got none.
All right. Any questions for the Town Attorney? Up next is our Finance Director, Natalie Slay.
A weekly report for Finance Department and Customer Service. We're working on fiscal 23 utility funds budget projections. We're meeting with the departments. Set up and reviewed the reserve accounts and set up the bank accounts for all the reserves that have been created for the general fund. We're reviewing the bonds and loans for the next fiscal 23 balances and principal and interest payments. Reviewed and assessed estimated payoff time for the capital project for the police building and the income and slot revenue projections. I'm hoping we will review and revisit recommendations for the water and sewer rates in the nearest future, as well as the stormwater rates. We've performed disconnects and reviewed delinquent accounts. We've looked at all the past due accounts and collections, submitted PCA to the Public Service Commission for approval. I have 2 outstanding reports for annual reconciliation to Public Service Commission to be completed by May. Also, we perform monthly billing for all of the invoices submitted by the utility funds. We've performed bi-weekly department meetings to review scheduled projects and planning. And we're working on a going paperless for utility billing currently to be implemented.
Thank you. Any questions for our Finance Director? Thank you. Up next is our Public Works Director, Jimmy Charles.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
We started our spring cleanup. We started over here at Stevenson Church. We cleaned up all the sticks and the branches and leaves, and we did replace about 4 6x6 curb stops and put them back in place in the parking lot there. I was hoping to wait to mulch it till the spring, the April 23rd Berlin cleanup day, but we might get to it before that point. We started in the park last week. We've been, with weather permitting, we finally were able to get in the park. But then, like today, I come in and it's flooded again. So it'll be another week till we get back into the parks again. Street paving, with Waterworks, we teamed up with Jamie and Waterworks, and we were going around town doing all the potholes. We got Shaw Street, and we have a couple more to hit later this week. Feel free to stop by Public Works. All the equipment I have that I put in my surge budget is right there at Public Works. Come down, look at it, take you 20 minutes. Just take a look at it and then judge it on your own, you know. That's all I'm asking about, looking through my equipment. With warmer weather, we're getting back to sweeping on a regular duty, weekly basis. That's all I have for my report.
Thank you. I do want to say thank you to you and your crews for picking up the trash cans and power washing them. Look much better. I still think that if there's a way that we can clean those labels off, I'd love to see that. But the cans are looking a heck of a lot better. Thank you.
We'll work on it. I do have one more. Something we may need to think about is the beautification committee, because the War Memorial, we'll have to start addressing that probably in the next couple weeks. Next week. Next 2 weeks or so.
So yeah, we got a grant for that. So the Main Street Improvement Grant that I spoke about before, I think you were here when find it. I have a budget, I'll get with you tomorrow, and we can talk about the budget, but I think it's something like $3,400 that we put in there specifically for the Memorial Garden if we wanted to have someone take over that again. So that grant money was specifically for the memorial.
But you're more focused on the horsepower, right? The manpower.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, we just still have a budget, but I don't have I mean, this is wrong, but I don't really have a gardener in my department.
I would say, judging by the work that you've done with our beautiful flowers downstairs, you might have, we might promote you to head gardener.
Okay.
Yeah, they're dead.
Easy, there's some green on them. Good time.
Very nicely went out.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Jimmy made them so straight and perfect. Yeah, I hope they're coming.
What's green is all that's gonna be green in there.
You
Nothing
think so?
else is gonna come back.
Mary, don't hurt my feelings.
I'm sorry.
She did though, she got out there the other day and she
Snapped everything
cut
down.
everything, she had little gloves on.
You don't think they're gonna come back?
No, what's green there now is probably.
They won't. I was hoping that they were
But they
gonna
do grow,
rejuvenate.
they're like a.
They spread around, and in a couple of years you can divide them. and
We'll reevaluate that. All right, any questions for Jimmy Charles, Public Works? All right, up next is our Deputy Town Administrator, Mary Bolton.
The main thing that I have a couple of things, but the one that I really want to emphasize is the need to fill the Board of Supervisors on elections. That formal process begins in July. I cannot do anything without that. Literally, I could start taking candidate forms, but they can't be approved without a board.
And we have had 0 applications, so if you have anybody that's interested.
How many openings?
4. We have 4 that are either up for renewal or.
3 are up for renewal, and then there was one who retired. I honestly don't know. He may be one of the 3 that was up. I don't
No, he
know.
wasn't. That's
No.
what presented the conflict.
But I cannot emphasize enough, I cannot do it without a board. They must vote on things.
So I'm sorry, I'm confused. Are there 3 folks renewing, so you need 1, 4?
No. So we've received word that some of the 3 would probably not want to continue. So
Okay,
we are
so you're looking for
advertising
4.
for 4 positions.
Is there an age requirement?
They have to be registered voters of the town. Jeff and I were working on a draft RFP for the demolition of the chicken plant with the demo grant monies. It's very much a draft at this point. There's nothing concrete. Tony left, but I did want to mention that there will be a groundbreaking at Burbridge Park for the tennis table park on this Saturday, April 2nd at 9 a.m.
Bring your own shovel.
Yes, bring your own shovel. The Parks Commission will meet on Tuesday, April 5th. This is out of their schedule. Normally they meet every other month, but this is to plan for the spring events that they have coming up. As Natalie mentioned with the paperless billing, I've been working with them to try to put together some promotional materials for that. And I am looking at quotes for shredding some outdated documents, which will get us that much closer to a better organized record system.
Thank you. Any questions for our Deputy Town Administrator?
Yeah, Mary, just real quick, someone asked, you kind of already answered it, I think, but someone asked me about the election paperwork to file as a candidate. Any, I know you are waiting on a committee.
I will have it by mid-May.
The paperwork?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They
But, as I said,
You need the people.
yeah,
Got
I
it.
can't do anything, even if someone turned it in, I can't certify them as a candidate, which means that they cannot proceed as a candidate without the board approving them.
Thank you.
In other words, that translates to these 4 positions are very high priority.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for our Deputy Town Administrator? All right, up next is our Administrative Manager, Kelsey Johnson.
I will try to roll through this. Over April, you can expect a packet every week, and I will be doing minutes every week, so bear with me if I'm, maybe a little slower on getting that information out. It's quite a bit to do. So I'll be working on that over the next month. And then Maryland State Retirement has launched a new portal that goes live April 11th, which is a typical payday, but because of Good Friday, I'll be running it a little early. So I won't actually use the new portal until April 25th payroll. So with that being said, April 11th payroll will be completed April 8th as a heads up to the department heads. Working on the April constant contact with Mary. We have set the date, I couldn't remember if I said this last meeting, but July 30th for the Berlin Jolly Rogers Day, and that just includes some discounted tickets for town employees. We will be posting a job ad coming up soon for an electric position, waiting on some final approval on that job description. This is our last week of running the Public Works Superintendent position. Jimmy and I are going to evaluate those candidates that have applied this week. We really haven't received very many, I think 4 total, and it's run for about 6 weeks. So we're gonna take a look at those. We also have several other vacancies, 2 police officers, part-time police communication officers, wastewater plant operator trainee, and then as I mentioned, we will have the electric position coming up soon. We did monthly fire extinguisher checks and random drug testing took place on the 16th. I had a Maryland Municipal Clerks quarterly meeting on March 17th for the town clerk side of things. Sent out vacation buyback information to employees, and that is due back to me on April 30th. We held our final handbook committee meeting, and that was me and 1 member of each department. We went through the handbook and made a few changes. We'll be bringing those recommended changes to you guys here soon. It was nothing major, mostly housekeeping, changing pronouns, some title updates, just some outdated information in there. Still waiting on the renewal numbers, which I know that he did touch base with Jeff this evening. It looks like we might have something to possibly go off of this week. And then, the last thing I wanted to mention was that we are trying to set up CPR, AED, and first aid training. We used to do that through Worcester County. They're no longer offering that due to COVID. I reached out to the fire company, and they said they don't have anyone in-house who's certified to do that training. So we reached out to Warwick, and they did give us a very reasonable price. So now I'm trying to see if it's something we can afford to do this year, because we do have it in our electric positions. Actually, it's a requirement of the job, so we do need to make sure we're offering that training to staff. So that's what I got this evening. Sorry.
Yeah, don't apologize. Any questions for Administrative Manager Chelsea Johnson?
How much is it? Just curious.
Warwick offers it at $97 per person, but they are offering us come on site for $40 per person. So they're offering us a really good rate. That includes the certification card and first aid training, which wasn't something we typically received in the past. So I think it's well worth it. We just have to see budget-wise if we can make it work this year. So.
All right. Up next is comments from the council. Vice President Burrow. Councilmember Brunel? No. Shanika? Councilmember Nichols, would you like to go?
Nope, nothing to say.
Okay. Councilmember Nurse?
I just have one quick thing. We consider asking the state highway to lower the speed limit on Main Street from Stevenson Church to run towards the end of the visitor center. From 25 to 15. 25 is way too fast. There's too many pedestrians there.
I'll get in touch with Jay Meredith and figure out what the process would look like and what we would have to request on our end, and we'll report back.
So maybe Steven said the Buckingham?
Yes. Buckingham jump back.
Stevenson Church and Buckingham Presbyterian.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Orts?
Yeah, just one thing, and I will try to be quick. So I'm following up on this. I asked Jeff and Natalie twice on this if we can get credit card information in the packets.
And I informed you before the meeting that Natalie's working on that. When she finishes it, I'll evaluate to see what, and I'll communicate back to you.
All right, thank you.
It's just in the packet. I'm trying to create a report that would summarize it a little bit more. It would create pages and pages of paper. It's very lengthy, monthly reports.
Well, I'm looking forward to what you both figure out what to do.
So right now I have to pull the report and see I have to reduct the 4-digit number for credit card, delete the name, and then summarize it. So it takes a lot of manual work since we're paying it not on a check, we're paying it online. So if I can generate a different report, I can email it because it's still gonna be over 40 pages long. It's every single person, every single department head and a purchaser for the town, monthly details. So it's a lot of pages.
No, I
don't
get
wanna
that.
kill the trees, that's all.
No, I get it, I understand. Just, I'll follow up.
So off the top of your head, and I don't mean this question to be unreasonable, just your best guess, how many purchases per month?
Per card? Or
Per card?
Total.
Oh, total. I wouldn't guess. It depends. People, like water department and public works, they do use the card a lot because they purchase parts and supplies. But for example, like Jeff and Dave Engelhardt and Mary would have like 3 transactions because we're not heavy users. So mostly it's like police department, electric, utilities funds use a lot.
So what, 50 or 75, 100 purchases?
About 50 per month, yes.
For our department?
Per card.
50
So
per-
each user would have about 30 to 50 transactions per month.
And how many users?
I believe we have 25 cards.
You've got all department heads and then superintendents.
Superintendents as well.
Dean, I probably use mine 10 to 15 times a month. Between Atkins, going for parts that we're not, like, other than Home Depot, Stone and areas throughout, that might not be our vendors.
Mine's a lot of reoccurring costs like
Right.
Easy Pass for the town, constant
website.
contact, website fees, stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
easier to set up a automatic credit card payments. Mine's mostly stuff like that.
And Kelsey actually pays ADP or payroll processor.
I do, I pay
Yeah, credit
ADP
card.
through that because it's much faster. We had a lot of issues with, they give you 10 days after you process payroll to receive a payment. We cut checks once a week. It just, we were cutting it very close every week and most of the time we were ending up late or close to late. So we found it much easier to just go ahead and start doing that with the credit card. It's all documented though and broken down per department and attached to that credit card statement. It's just to avoid late fees. So, which we see a lot of with the Postal Service recently, so.
I just have one more question. How or who scrutinizes the purchases?
So the purchasing policy in place, each department head authorizes to use every single transaction for the department. Then all the transactions get summarized with the receipt attached and go into Shirley. I review every single statement and pay online with Shirley together every month. So what I can offer going forward, instead of putting it on the paper, we can email you the reports in PDF. If you would like to review them this way.
Jack, anyone?
I think that in the interest of time tonight, I will follow with you tomorrow.
That's fine.
And we can see how best to move forward.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. No, I'm done.
Okay. That concludes council comments. Up next is agenda item number 9, comments from the mayor. Can you share, so we, the past 2 years I've been asked to go to Mr. Marks's, I don't know if many of you know him or not, Berlin resident, but also teaches at Stephen Decatur in the marketing program. And this year his students produced this work product, and it was done by Joe Bucksbaum, Zach Goodwin, and Ashton Schnellshire. And it's about marketing for Berlin. It's very brief.
Sorry, I don't know what it's doing.
Oh,
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Have you been looking for a getaway for the family? Without all the traffic, annoying tourists, and expensive prices? Come on into the welcoming town of Berlin. We have the restaurants, stores, and parks that will make you and your family feel at home.
Here at Berlin, we provide the comforting small-town feeling you had in your childhood. Everything is walking distance away, and there are thousands of activities year-round that you and your family can choose from. Come book your stay today in Berlin.
Take a vacation from the hustle and bustle of your everyday lives and bring the family to Berlin now.
So Ivy, it looks like you've got some folks to recruit for your team in the future when they graduate high school to help market Berlin. But thank you to Stephen Decatur's marketing program, and thank you, Mr. Marks. That concludes my report for the evening. Comments from the public? Comments from the press?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.